I know you could be many other places, so I'm very happy that you've joined me this evening. So, without further ado, I'm going to just give a brief introduction to some of my memoirs. For those who've never joined us before, I'm going to just show you some of the memoirs I've written over the years. One of them, Red Car Long Legs, this talks about the time I lived in Southern California and all the adventures and misadventures. So we read from this book a couple of weeks ago. The first book I had written was Escape from Ireland. I lived in Ireland for about 7 years, and this book talked about all the adventures of living and working in Ireland and being an entrepreneur. Oh, hi Suzanne, so good you could join us. So happy to see you. Now last week we had a little fun. We read from Dérivé, a Trini expat comes home. So we had a lot of fun with this one last week, and some soca and carnival jokes. Another book I've written, Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire, and that talks about moving to Toronto and all the hurdles one had to jump over to settle in a big city like this as a new immigrant to Toronto. And tonight I'm going to read from Where Are My Car Keys, and this talks about my mother's journey with Alzheimer's disease. I've also written the children's companion book, so an illustrated kids book about the same topic, written in the voice of one of my nephews who watched his granny through this journey with Alzheimer's disease. And tonight's presentation is dedicated to my aunt who died just recently from Alzheimer's disease. Her funeral was on Tuesday. So for Auntie Audrey Irish Defoe, I want to dedicate today's book reading because both Auntie Audrey and my mother died from Alzheimer's disease. So, you know, in their family, it was huge affliction over the years because several members of the family died from Alzheimer's disease. So what I'll do, and you heard those calypsos that I played at the beginning. My mother loved that song as a Trini. So I think we should play it we should play a few verses one more time because she so loved that song. Let's play one more verse because this was her favorite. Even when she didn't have her full memory, she loved this song and she would dance to it because Gloria James just loved soca, and this was one of her favorites. So let's take a little dance for Gloria James. I don't care what nobody say. Every carnival that I play, plus I know all artists and only mass man. Who remembers this one? I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Look. And the like how Trini does cook. And the like to get Trini talk. I have to take off the glasses to do my dance, you know. And we make good company. And we make good company. And we make good company. All right. So we'll take a little pause from Isa Trini, which was Gloria's favorite song. I'm going to read the introduction to the book. Alzheimer's disease is described as the progressive deterioration of the mind, personality, and body caused by the degeneration of the brain. The disease can begin in late middle age and continue into old age, but what starts the brain's deterioration is still unknown. Learning about another family's journey can sometimes help in understanding and preparing if your loved one is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Everyone is affected by Alzheimer's disease differently, but an emotional roller coaster is an almost universal journey for caregivers and family members. This book describes our family's voyage as our mother Gloria James, or Mammy as we called her affectionately, battled Alzheimer's disease over a period of 12 years. It is a collection of stories beginning in 2006 when my siblings and I first acknowledged that our mother's mental and physical state were changing, until her eventual death in January 2018. One of our concerns was that many elderly parents of our peers in Diamond Vale, Diego Martin, had also developed Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. We joked about this, saying there must have been something in the water. We saw a pattern that could not be coincidental, and yet, as far as we knew, nobody was researching this trend. The cause of this debilitating condition is unknown. Would I develop the disease if my grandmother, my mother, my uncle, my aunt had this condition? Was it hereditary? Was it an affliction which plagued people who lived through World War II rations in Trinidad? Was it related to their diet? With so many questions and no answers, it's difficult not to worry. We don't want to become a statistic. So that's the thing, in our family, with so many people who experience Alzheimer's disease, it is a bit worrying for us. How many of you have relatives who suffered from Alzheimer's disease? Put it in the chat box. Let me see. Anybody out there? Send me a note. Let me see. Have you had anyone in your family suffer from Alzheimer's disease? Send me a note in the chat box. Who's out here? Yeah? Somebody else, let's see, put a note in the chat box. Let me know if you've had a relative who suffered from Alzheimer's. Anybody? No notes? Okay, so when I first noticed my mom changing, it was 2006 and I was living in Ireland. And my sister Colette brought Mommy and her two sons on holidays to Ireland to visit. So I'll just read a short passage of some of the things we noticed. I kept the family busy with sights and trips all over Dublin. We did the hop-on, hop-off bus tour of Dublin and then a day trip to Wicklow County to see the waterfalls and Glendalough. Mommy seemed excited by all the new sights. However, she kept mixing up the names of places and counties, and it was a lot for her to digest. We also took a day trip to the aquatic center and we tried all the slides and tubes. I observed small changes in my mother's behavior when I took her out one day for a drive to have some tea. We visited Phoenix Park, the largest park in Dublin, and I showed her some of the beautiful gardens, the cricket pitch, and deer roaming freely in some areas. We then went to the tea rooms. My mother mumbled incessantly about nothing and looked visibly uncomfortable. I tried to put her at ease have her enjoy the trip because she used to love sightseeing so much. She walked slowly and tentatively, and one of her knees was bent slightly to meet the other. Little did I know that her constant mumbling and feeling uncomfortable were just the start of a downward spiral leading to Alzheimer's. So these are some of the first signs that we saw. Yeah, Susan is saying her mom has dementia. Yes. But, dementia, I guess, sometimes occurs as we advance in age, but Alzheimer's can start quite early in someone's life. Another time we noticed in 2006 again, we had a party in Dublin for some friends. Most of the guests sat in the sunroom at the back of the house and a few under the umbrella in the patio in the garden. The sunroom also served as a TV room. Since the World Cup matches were still taking place, we let the TV run through the party so those consumed by World Cup fever could watch. Shaka Hislop of Pearl Parkway, Diamond Vale, Diego Martin. My mother screamed at the television as advertising came on air. Shaka Hislop, the goalkeeper of the Trinidad and Tobago World Cup football team, was a former neighbor who grew up on the same street where we were raised. His family was always involved in sports, and we felt proud to know he was representing our country. Everyone looked at me as Mommy screamed at the television and said, "Oh, she always does that," I replied. "No big deal." The concern was whether she thought the announcer was talking back to her. You see, Mommy lived alone at her home in Trinidad and enjoyed watching U.S. game show networks all day and night. Colette remembered seeing Mommy shout answers at the television, and she even asked her little dog to answer the questions the show participants couldn't answer. So we had a lot of jokes when my mother would do what would be considered crazy things. So we'd say either laugh or you cry. So one would have different responses to the Alzheimer's patient's behavior. We chose to laugh. And I think that was a good way to, to cope. So, anyone else in the, tell me in the chat box if you know of people who are suffering from Alzheimer's at the moment. Anybody? No? All right, let's play another one of Mommy's favorite songs. Because she liked as a Trini, and then she also liked Palance. And one time when we went home for Carnival in 2011, this was her favorite song. So I'm just going to play a little bit just to liven up our evening today. What's happening? It's not going. Tiffany? All right, I guess. I didn't get the one I wanted, but we'll continue it as a Trini. I'm not in a bad, I'm telling you. Where you from? We're from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a Trini, from Trini. Oh, cause they love how Trini does look. And they like how Trini does cook. And they like to hear Trini talk. Short interlude. Get yourself a little drink and then take a little chip for Gloria. This was her favorite. So now I'm going to tell you about 2009 when Gloria came to visit me again in Ireland, but this time her Alzheimer's disease had really advanced. Yes, so I was living in Tramore, County Waterford, which is in the southeast part of Ireland. And in 2009, my mother Gloria came to visit me with one of her friends, Kim. Now, even though she had Alzheimer's disease, she still liked to travel because travel was her thing. She would travel every single year, go on vacation somewhere. She realized that her mind was going, so she decided she would ask one of her best friends to travel with her. So her friend traveled with her to Ireland. And unfortunately, when she got there, She couldn't understand how she got there, and she asked us many, many times, how did I get here? How did I get here? How did I get here? And I had to explain it repeatedly. But that's how it is with the Alzheimer's patient, and one has to be very, very patient with the Alzheimer's person. Now, let me tell you what it was like driving from Dublin to get my mother back to Tramore County, Waterford, where I live. My plan was to fly to London Gatwick Airport to meet my mother and Kim and fly back with them to Dublin. This meant renting a car in Waterford, driving to the Dublin airport, leaving my car in the long-term parking, getting an early jet to Gatwick, taking the Gatwick shuttle in between terminals. So I met them. They had left their baggage in baggage claim. I took them on the shuttle back to Gatwick terminal so that they could get a flight to Dublin. And then after checking in, I tried without success to get them to eat lunch. It was going to be a long journey flying to Dublin, followed by at least 2.5 hours drive to Waterford. We had something on the plane, they protested. We had something on the plane. We don't need to eat. Yes, I said, but that was hours ago. Please eat something. Mommy was extremely disoriented and nervous. She spilled all her tea on the table in the restaurant and was already talking about going back to her house in Trinidad. It was going to be a very, very long day for me. We finally boarded the flight to Dublin, and by the time we arrived, my 2 elderly companions were at their wits' end with fatigue. As we drove to Waterford, Mommy got more and more agitated. The small roads were long and winding through every town. I knew every bend in the road, but for the unsuspecting traveler, it was grass, forest, trees, and bush, endless bush. "You are taking me in the forest to kill me," Mommy protested. "Where are we going? Put me out now so I could take a taxi home." There was no stopping her, and Kim sat quietly, not knowing what to do. Mercifully, we got home in good time, and we were able to get Mommy settled in Tiffany's room. "Where am I?" she asked. "How did I get here?" I had to explain about 3 or 4 times how they flew from London via Barbados, then from London to Dublin, then we drove from Dublin to Tramore. "How did I get here?" she asked again. So I explained it again. "Tramore? No, it's Tramore, Tramore," Mommy kept saying. It was truly funny. I unloaded the luggage, took back the rental car, retrieved my 2-seater van from parking at the rental car company, and it was a solid 12-hour journey for me. 12 hours to collect my guests. Now, the following day, I'll tell you what happened. I had recently participated in the filming of an episode of the Irish Dragon's Den, and the following morning, I had my initial appointment with the dragons who pledged support in my business. Since the journey to collect my mother and Kim was so arduous, I decided to give myself a break from driving and take the train to Dublin for my appointment. Kim was left in charge of the house. I showed her how to navigate around the kitchen, and I left everything to catch that early train to Dublin. The journey was ideal for collecting my thoughts and getting paperwork together for the meeting ahead. As the train traveled through County Kildare, my mobile phone started ringing. It was a call from the house. Kim was extremely flustered and worried because my mother was trying to run away and had attempted to open the front door many times to take a taxi back to her house in Diamond Vale, Digomatic. She kept threatening to push Kim over. I felt helpless because I was on a train. There was no turning back. I asked Kim to put Mommy on the phone so I could speak to her and reassure her that everything was okay. After about 5 minutes of talking, she calmed down a little, and I promised to return home as early as possible. I knew my visit to Dublin could take all day, so I just prayed that Mommy would remain calm until I returned. So that was one episode where my mother lost all control. I wasn't around. She was with an elderly friend trying to push her over to push her way out of the house, and in her mind take a taxi back to Diamond Vale, Dugomat, to her house. And at that time she was in Tramore, County Waterford. Hello Sherry-Ann, good to see you. So somebody tell me, have you ever been in a situation like that where you had to try and control an elderly person who was getting quite violent actually? Anybody ever had such a situation? It's not easy, but with the Alzheimer's patient, you have to, that's why there are people who specialize in the treatment of the elderly, because for the average person it would be quite difficult. Anybody here has ever had to take care of an elderly person who experienced dementia? I know Suzanne is experiencing that right now, but I think her mom is calm. Anybody else? Oh, hello Jill, good to see you. Yes, so anybody else who has experience here with an elderly person experiencing dementia? Tell me in the chat box. Anybody? Nobody. Okay. I'll continue. Now that same time when my mom was visiting, I decided to take them to church because Kim wanted to go to the Catholic church for Christmas. So let me tell you all what happened. I had started cooking the Christmas meal a full day in advance to prepare a wonderful feast for our visitors. Since my mother and Kim had to spend their vacation in a cold, old stone house where the damp came in no matter how much the house was heated, the least I could do was make them a hearty meal. I prepared roast turkey, ham, leg, pork chops, roast lamb, macaroni pie, rice dishes, and a variety of salads. I made the traditional black Christmas cake with rum and fruit salad, ice cream, and any other dish I could imagine, for good measure. It was a meal for a family of 15 when in fact it was just 4 of us. Needless to say, we had food for days after Christmas. Kim had been clamoring to go to the Catholic church for Christmas Mass. I could not deny them the Christmas Mass, but I only had a 2-seater van at that time. So I decided to ask Sean, an old boyfriend, if he wouldn't mind taking us to church. I knew his routine, and I hadn't spoken to him for a long time, but I made the bold request that he would come and take my mother and her friend Kim to Christmas Mass. So he was polite and he said yes, he would. On Christmas Day, we rose early, had a light breakfast, and about 10 minutes before Sean arrived to take us to church, I went to check on my mother, who was dressing feverishly in her room. She was dressed in a beautiful sleeveless blue and white dress with a light cotton shawl and silver sandals, with a silver handbag to match. The only problem was that it was 1 degree Celsius outside and the wind was howling, making it feel like -5 degrees Celsius. In her mind, she was probably in the Caribbean on Christmas Day. "Mommy, please, let's change everything and put on some warm clothes," I begged. "But then, people at church won't see my dress," she said. Despite losing her memory, she hadn't lost the desire to dress up and look beautiful. It was ingrained in her from childhood. The Irishes used to dress up and look beautiful. Her whole family loved to dress to impress, including my grandmother. So that's one thing I found quite interesting. Even though she was losing her mind, all she wanted to do was dress up and look lovely and make sure everybody saw how beautiful she looked. So what do you all think about that? Let's see in the chat box. Yes, so Colette, yes, Colette took care of mommy for quite a few years. Anybody else notice anything peculiar with a person with dementia? Please leave a note in the chat box. I am going to play another song. Let's see what we can play now. Palance. Let's play Palance. This was one of Gloria's favorites.
At Asana, we know people work in all sorts of different ways. So with Asana, your team can view any project in the...
Taking a little... Uh-oh. Palance. We're taking a little chip for Gloria because Palance was one of her favorite calypsos back in 2011. It's Friday night. I want everybody to get a glass of wine, get a glass of rum punch, juice, whatever you have, and take a little chip. This was Gloria's favorite song. Everybody, come on. 3, 4, Palance. Next side. Palance, 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 Palance. All right, it's Friday. Come on, folks. Take a little jump. Yes, yes, since last time we play Masters. Jump up, jump up. Everybody, come on. One more time. Palance, 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 Palance. All right. All right, you take a pause from the Palance. Okay, that was fun. Just a little Palance break. So now I'm going to give you a few jokes. The same Christmas when Gloria and Kim visited us in Ireland. After Christmas Day, we had to do a little more entertaining because it was cold inside. But I thought, we'd take them for a little drive. So let me tell you a few jokes. After spending 2 days indoors, we needed a day out so I could keep my sanity and the guests could see some of Ireland. We rented a car and I took the old girls to see the most recent 3D movie, My mother and Kim shouted at the screen, wearing their 3D glasses, much to Tiffany's amusement. They really enjoyed the action film. The following day, I decided to take them to Cork City for a quick visit. With the short daylight hours, I wanted to leave early in the morning, but we ended up setting out closer to midday because it took hours to get them dressed to leave. My mother said, I want to shop. I want to shop at Marks and Spencer's. I want to buy a dress and I have lots of money. So she knew that she had brought money for shopping. And as I mentioned before, she loved to dress up. So even with Alzheimer's disease, all she knew is that she had money and she wanted to shop and she had lots of money. So that's what she told me. I knew she had money and had been burning to spend it for something for days. However, I had no energy for a shopping trip and she couldn't walk very fast anyway. She couldn't walk long distances. As we drove to Cork, I pointed to various interesting places along the way. I had done the drive so many times while working at events, I could do it with my eyes closed. My mother kept blurting out driving instructions along the way. Go so! I said, go so! This was amusing, since she had never been to Cork before. At Swan Lake near Middleton, the fog made the lake barely visible. As I pointed out the area, I noticed that Mommy was still wearing her 3D glasses from the movie the night before. She couldn't possibly have seen anything clearly with those glasses. I turned around and Kim was not wearing her everyday glasses. She must have left them at home. So she wasn't seeing anything either. My sightseeing tour was a futile effort. So anyway, I had taken them out for a nice drive and all of that, and I was pointing out the sights, but I might have well been speaking to myself because nobody was seeing. So it was quite funny, especially the 3D glasses, because you know, if you wear 3D glasses, you can't see anything. So that was one of the jokes of the drive. So another time too, I'm going to tell you about what happened one night when I decided to go out with a friend for New Year's Eve. I was going to have one night off for a change of scenery and fun, and my friend Leo had made reservations at Clontarf Castle in Dublin, where we could go for New Year's Eve to a party and then stay overnight. I zipped into Waterford and picked up a lovely silver dress. While packing my bags to leave for the night, Kim and Mommy showered me with advice on what to wear. You must wear stockings. You can't have your legs out, said Kim. That dress is too short, said Mommy. You should have chosen something else. You can't wear a G-string underwear, said Mommy. That's so common and low class for a lady. I'll lend you one of my knickers. Mommy, yours may be a bit too big for me, I said. I'll see what I have. Tiffany couldn't stop laughing. It amused her to see the two old grannies trying to help me prepare my outfits for a night out. I left Kim in charge of the home with extra food in the refrigerator and ideas of what meals they could prepare for the next day. Kim wanted to go for a walk around the small town, and I agreed since she was fit and needed some exercise. Free at last, I thought, as Leah and I drove happily out of town. We were very excited about the upcoming night of fun. It was going to be a large dinner party with hats and whistles, and an opportunity to stay overnight at Clontarf Castle. Reports of a pending heavy snowfall filled the airwaves, but not much had fallen by that time. We hoped to be safely tucked away at night at Clontarf Castle with no worry about when the storm hit. When we were on the M9 highway just passing Kilcullen, I got a call from my neighbor in Tremor. Kim had fallen in front of the house. She couldn't walk, and they had called for an ambulance. So can you imagine? It was the last, or the only night away from the girls, and one had fallen, and it turns out she had broken her hip. So to find out what happened next, you have to get your copy of Where Are My Car Keys, because that's a story all by itself. Anyway, but can you imagine them telling me how to dress, what to wear, and mommy offering to lend me her knickers? That was so funny. Yes, I see some people enjoying that one in the chat box. It sure was funny. All right, now I'll tell you about another time when I went home to Trinidad. It was 2011, and by that time I had moved back to Canada, and my mother's Alzheimer's disease had really progressed very far by that time. One thing though, she loved her car and she loved to drive, so even with Alzheimer's, she was still driving in 2011, and we were a bit concerned about the driving, you know, being a danger to herself and the public. But we still let her drive. And in 2011, unfortunately, her car broke down and had to go to the mechanic. She had to take it to the mechanic. I want my car. I so want my car because I have to go out. I said, Mommy, don't worry about it. We will take you where you need to go. Despite my best efforts, there was nothing I could say or do to prevent her from walking down the street in the blazing sun to the mechanic's shop. I took her by the hand to guide her back to the house, but she was very strong and very angry. She threatened to punch me, and I had to let her go. With a stick in one hand and a mission firmly cemented in her head, she made her way down the road to the mechanic's shop where her car was being repaired. That morning, she walked with energy, commitment, and determination that she hadn't displayed in a very long time. The mechanic conducted his business from his front yard, and on that very day, the residents on the street were hosting a big carnival breakfast party. My concern was that the mechanic had some vicious guard dogs in his yard. Given the potential for a disaster to unfold, I prayed that he had fenced them in at the back. Mommy was wearing a black sleeveless blouse with patterns and a pair of white leggings. That outfit was fine for the house, but not suitable for walking down the street. However, she was determined to go just the way she was, and there was nothing I could do to stop her. That mechanic better have my car ready, she threatened. He's had it for days now. I tried calling my brother who was at the breakfast party to ask him to look out for Mommy. She used to say Brent was her son in whom she was well pleased. Colette and I were the wayward women who went astray and lived abroad. So I called her son in whom she was well pleased to find his mother and bring her safely home so she wouldn't get lost in the crowds at the breakfast party. About half an hour passed and I wasn't able to reach him. However, I saw Mommy walking back up the street full of energy, like when she left. She said she hadn't seen the mechanic and there was too much noise. What a relief. She had returned in one piece. I served her some lunch and a cold drink. She would have been dehydrated after her walk in the hot sun, but she wouldn't really have noticed. Okay, Mommy, it's time to get changed for the party. You are going to the Senior Achievers Carnival Fete, I said, hoping she would get out of the transparent leggings and wear something different. Change for what? She said, puzzled. Remember, you're going to the party this afternoon. It's your favorite carnival dance, I told her. Time to change your clothes. I'm not changing my clothes, she said stubbornly. Yes, you are, I said. You can't go in the same clothes you've worn all day. I coaxed and pleaded about 15 minutes, but she refused to change. Eventually, I gave up. It wasn't worth the fight. A great deal of patience is needed with someone suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and I was not really blessed with the patience to say the same thing repeatedly. "Where are we going?" she asked half an hour later. "We're going to the Senior Achievers Carnival dance," I said for the umpteenth time. "That's your favorite carnival dance. You'll get to see all your friends." When we arrived, Mommy walked in slowly through the gates as I gave our tickets. "Hi, Gloria, how are you?" asked a few elderly ladies and gentlemen. "Fine, thanks," my mother answered, although I got the impression she really didn't know who these people were. Even though we arrived a few minutes early, many of the patrons who were over 70 years old were already at the venue reserving their tables and chairs. The younger ones, who were probably in their 60s, would arrive fashionably late to events. But the elderly were there early because they were worried about not having anywhere to sit down. Why sit when you were going to a carnival dance? But I guess if you had arthritis in your knees like my mother, a seat was vital. I was lucky to see 2 empty chairs at a table near the entrance when we walked in. The O'Neills, our childhood friends, occupied 2 seats at the table, so I was happy to see them and have a chat. They gave Mommy a frigid stare and cold shoulder, and I felt some tension. She said a big hello with a smile, but I doubted she recognized these people. Mommy must have slighted them in the past, but I didn't know the story. Surely they should have known she was not mentally stable. They were of sound mind, like most of the people at the party. Was my mother the only one suffering from a form of dementia at that event? Why weren't the elderly able to recognize dementia in their peers? These were questions I kept asking myself. The soca music was blaring and my mother got onto the dance floor immediately. They were playing Trini. And so she joined the others who were on the floor. Arthritis or not, in her knocking knees, she didn't seem to mind. I saved her seat for her with a bag and spoke to the friends around. She came to sit down for a short while and I brought some food and drinks. As soon as she ate, she was back on that floor. She danced and danced. A friend came to pick us up at 4:30 and it was just enough time, I think. The dance hall was sweltering hot with many large fans, but the intense heat was wearing me out and I was seated half of the time. At last we returned home and I got Mommy ready for bed. She was tired and needed no coaxing to have a shower and get dressed. "Oh, my knees hurted me so much," she said, in pain. "Why my foot hurted me so much?" "That's because you danced at the party," I explained. "You enjoyed the soca music so much you hardly sat down." "Party? What party?" she asked. So, can you imagine? She had danced for like almost 3 hours. And she didn't even remember she had gone to a party. She was in pain from all the dancing. She didn't remember she went to a party. And she was dancing to Trini all the time. So let me play that song again because that year Trini was popular. So let's play it one more time. Just for Gloria. Because that was her song. 2011 Carnival.
These days, we all must find new ways to get our work done. And with Asana, your team can...
All right. This was the song that Gloria danced to for 3 hours. Well, of course, they played other things, but come on. When you said, oh yes, the over 70 crew. This is their kind of soca song. All right. How many Trinis we have on the call? We're not on the bad, I'm telling you. Oh, the carnival costume. Here we go. I played mask. Who wants to play mask in 2021? Let's see how many. How many of you played mask next year? And we make a company. Mask, play mask. Mask in your mask, play mask. Telling you, where we from Trinidad and Tobago. We playing mass, let me see, oh, KWI Bonify, we playing mass in 2021. I think Toronto have a carnival jump up for Black Lives Matter tomorrow. I can wear my costume and go. KWI Bonify, what you think? Should I wear my costume and go down the road? They hiring a truck. We're taking a little trip for Gloria, alright? Every carnival I done there, plus I know all artists and only mass. It's Friday night, so we're having a little fun. I'm telling you, where I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Trini. Oh, cause the love of Trini does look. And the love of Trini does cook. See me there. And the like to get Trini talk. Oh, hi Donna, good to see you. Yay, Friday night fun. One of my favorite headpieces, so I love to use it as a prop in our book readings. Next time I'll bring out another one. All right. Well, thanks for indulging me in Trini. As I said, it was one of Gloria's favorite. One of my mom's favorite calypsos during her time with Alzheimer's disease. She really enjoyed dancing to that one. She could go for hours. As a Trini. She really loved it. Now, I'm going to fast forward about 5 years. My mom had gone to one senior's home and then a second one where she stayed for quite a few years, about 4 years before she finally passed away. And I'll tell you all about a few funny situations. Now, by that time, she couldn't really walk and didn't recognize us, but she still liked a little fun. So there was I'll tell you a funny situation about her stay at Brent's Manor. It was a senior's home up in the hills in St. Joseph. A tall, muscular physiotherapist, who I called Philbert in the book, he came to do rehabilitation with some of the residents at the manor. Philbert looked like a bodybuilder or someone who had consumed a great deal of protein powder and or steroids. He did a modest trade with the residents and posted every small progress on Facebook so we could observe from far away. My mother hadn't walked in a year, and Filbert promised he could make her walk again with the right exercises. Filbert showed one lady who partially recovered the use of her legs after a stroke and was able to step forward. It was encouraging to watch. Mommy, who by this time didn't seem to recognize me or other family members, certainly recognized Filbert, and we hired him to do exercises with her. He worked with several elderly patients on site so they could exercise and regain some mobility. The nurse told me that Mommy really liked him because he was good looking. The first time he came to do exercises with Mommy, she smiled and winked at him. When he came into a room, her eyes would light up and she would smile so happily. The same mother who did not follow the nurse's instructions would kick out her foot when Filbert asked her to do the exercises. Even in her state of dementia, she knew a good-looking man when she saw one, and she blushed uncontrollably. She even spoke to Filbert when he asked her to do the exercises. The most miraculous story for us happened when the other patient in Mommy's room died of complications. My mother hadn't been able to utter full sentences to us, and we assumed she wouldn't speak anything that made sense to us ever again. However, she observed everything that happened around her and listened carefully. Filbert reported that day, after the sick woman's death, that he was doing exercises with Mommy, and she told him, "The woman's dead! The woman's dead!" He was shocked and sent me messages right away. Nobody would have explained anything to my mother when they removed the woman's body from the room. They assumed Mommy was incapable of understanding. This incident demonstrated to me the importance of not ignoring the elderly or even speaking badly about them in their presence. One never knew what they could understand or retain. Any statement that could cause pain or unnecessary worry should be avoided. Yes, so, as I said, my mother recognized a good-looking man and she would smile sweetly at Filbert. And we thought she would never speak again. We thought she didn't understand what was going on. Well, in fact, she was observing and seeing everything. And she spoke to him and she told him what she was observing. So what do you all think about that? Well, one says, "Occur, Mrs. Gloria." Yes, occur is right. Yes, she really liked Filbert. Oh, hi, Shelley. Good to see you. Gloria loved life. She lived it to the fullest. Yes, she did. She did. Yeah, but we were really surprised when she told Filbert what she saw, because she wasn't speaking to anybody. She would pinch the nurses, kick them. When I asked her one time, I was visiting us, I asked, "Mommy, did you pinch the nurse?" She shook her head, no. She would bite them. So, she was quite mischievous. Even when she couldn't talk, she was always up to mischief. So those were a few fun situations. Of course, the ending is sad, but, I'll just read one short part, the last birthday party we had for Mommy, because every time I happen to go back, oh, hi, Michelle, good to see you. Every time I happen to go back to Trinidad at Christmas time, I would always stay for December 29th to celebrate my mother's birthday. So in December 2015, Tiffany and I returned to Trinidad to celebrate my mother's 83rd birthday. Tiffany hadn't seen her grandmother in 2 years, and by that time, Mommy had lost a significant amount of weight. And she still had a hearty appetite. So she was eating and it was just, the food was just passing through. When Tiffany first saw Mommy, she held on to me and sobbed. Why is she like that? What happened to Granny? Why is she like that? She's so skinny. When she calmed down, I asked her to just hug Granny and tell her stories, read for her. Granny would have wanted her to be happy. At least she was still alive. She was a great fighter and survivor. Yes, so that would be the last passage I'll read for you all tonight, because the end is, eventual death. And with Alzheimer's disease, we never know when a patient would die. We didn't know when our mother would die, but she held on for a long time until she was 85 and the body just gave up. But as I said, I played some of her fun songs, because when she couldn't walk, she would dance with her hands, like palance from side to side. So it was fun to watch. Oh, Shelley said, hardest part when your loved one no longer recognizes you. Yes, definitely. But I would always give her the benefit of the doubt that she recognized me as somebody she knew. In fact, one time she called me Wallace, and Wallace was her oldest brother. So she knew that I was family, but she didn't quite know who. So she called me Wallace. So that was good enough, because it was the name of a family member. Yes, well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight. And we'll have another book reading soon. If you're free next Friday evening, put in the chat box that you're free and we can do another book reading next Friday. I'll also give you the link to my website where you can read about all the books that I've written so far. It's jennylyndjames.com. So I'm going to put that link in the chat box, and you can check out my website. And don't forget to like my Facebook page, Jennylynd James Writer, Facebook page. Please like my page before you leave tonight. And thank you so much for attending. I'm going to play one more soca song so we can have a little fun. Let's see what we're going to play. Band of the Year. Let's play Band of the Year. We did that last week. That's a nice
Trouble
one.
keeping track of your team's work? You need a sauna. Capture everything.
Yes. This is a nice one to end the night. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. I know you could be doing anything else on a Friday night, but so happy you were able to join me tonight.
Me to do it.
Me.
Okay.
Okay, kids. So we all know the past few weeks have had us inside, but just to remember, we're all being heroes in our own way by staying inside and flattening the curve. So tonight we have a great story all about grannies. Do you want to tell us about this book?
Okay, so the name of the book is what?
Is that my granny?
And it's written and illustrated by Jennylynd James. Let's get started. Are you excited to read the story?
Yes, yes.
Yeah? I'm excited to hear you read it.
Daddy, can we have cookies? Thank you.
Nice and loud, okay?
Okay.
So everybody could hear you.
My granny lives alone in a house in Diamondvale, Legal Martin. She's big and tall and very strong. My granny grows fruit in the backyard and she loves to take care of her plants. Granny hugs me when we go to visit her. She gives me sponge cake to eat, oopsie, and orange juice to drink. Granny always gives me a big hug and a kiss on my cheeks.
Can I read this part? You want to read it?
One day, Granny pinches me and shows me an ugly face. The next time I went to visit, she screamed at me and told me to stop talking. Granny's meaning what has happened to my granny. after that, Granny got sick and we went to see her in the hospital. My mother said that Granny will have to stay in another home. Granny needed people to help her all the time.
Can I ask a question before you continue, Corinne?
Okay.
Why does Granny need people to take care of her?
Because she's sick.
She's sick. Okay, so let's go continue to read to find out what Granny's sickness. Slow down a little bit, right? So everybody
Okay.
can understand. Go ahead.
We helped Granny pack her clothes. She went to live in a home with many other grannies and grandpas. Soon after that, we went to visit her in the big new home. Nurses walked around the big home, feeding and helping all the grannies and grandpas. Granny smiled when she saw us, but she forgot my name. Is that my granny? I asked my mother. She has Alzheimer's disease. What? That's a really big word. I don't know how to spell that, I said. When people have Alzheimer's disease, they sometimes forget your name, my mother said.
Can I read now? Or you read another?
I'm reading on.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
What's it on?
People are saying, hi, Corinne, from Alyssa. Alyssa is looking on. So go ahead and read.
Okay. A long time after, we brought Granny to our home, to our house to eat Christmas dinner with us. Granny cannot walk. Now she has to sit in a wheelchair and we put her around. Granny says the same thing over and over. She called me Wallace and smiled. That's not my name, Granny. That's your brother's name. Is that my Granny? I asked. She has Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, and it will get worse, said Mommy. It can get worse? That sounds scary, I said.
What is Granny sick with?
Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's disease. And what happens when you have Alzheimer's disease?
People sometimes forget your name.
Oh, so Granny forgot his name. Okay, go ahead.
After some months,
Slow down just a little bit, right?
After some months, we visited Granny again, but she could not get out of bed. She lay on the bed looking at us with sad eyes. The nurse had to feed her. She can't even go to the toilet. Granny wears big diapers like a baby. The nurse has to change her diaper. Is that my Granny? I asked. She is in the last stage of Alzheimer's disease, my mother said. Granny's just like a baby. She needs lots of help. I felt very sad for my Granny. I gave her a big hug. Do you want to ask me a question?
Okay, you want me to ask you a question? Okay, so tell me again what sickness Granny has. What's the name of the disease that Granny has?
Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's disease? Would you feel sad if your Granny got sick? If your Grand-Grand and Mama Jan got sick? You wouldn't feel sad?
No.
Of course you feel sad if Grand-Grand and Mama Jan got sick. Okay, go ahead and read.
Not long after, my parents took me to the hospital. Granny was lying on the bed with her eyes closed. She could not speak and could not move. We had many tubes attached to her. Granny is really sick and she won't be with us much longer, said I. Do you want to tell her goodbye? But she can't hear me, I said. That's okay, Daddy. She will know you were here. I said goodbye and I said goodbye to Granny and kissed her on her cheek. I hope she heard me.
Okay, so what's happening with Granny on this page?
On this page,
Yeah, what's happening with Granny?
Granny cannot move or cannot speak. She had tubes attached to her.
She had tubes attached to her?
Mhm.
So that means she's getting even sicker? Alright.
I saw Granny after that at the big show. She was dressed up and looked like she was asleep lying in a box. What box is this? I asked Mary. It's called a coffin, she said. Granny is asleep forever. We all sang for Granny. Oopsie. Auntie, uncle, cousin, and friends came to say goodbye. Everyone cried, but I didn't cry because Mommy said Granny is in a better place. Bye-bye, Granny. We love you. And that's the end of the story, everyone.
That's the end of the story, but could you summarize the story for me? Tell me what happened. What was the story about?
Okay, the story was about the Granny didn't remember the boy's name.
Okay, why didn't Granny remember his name?
Because she had Alzheimer's disease.
She had Alzheimer's disease.
Mhm.
And what happened?
What happened?
When she got Alzheimer's disease?
Granny got to, she could not move or could not speak. She had tooth attached to her.
Okay, and what did Granny do with the boy before she got sick? Do you remember?
Yes.
What did she do?
I think she was giving her sponge cake to eat and orange juice to drink.
Do you like sponge cake?
Yes.
And what's your favorite flavor juice?
Fruit punch.
Do you like fruit punch?
Yes.
I like orange juice.
I like apple and fruit punch.
Okay. What else do you remember about the story?
With the she was in the big church and she was asleep, and then she was in a box called the coffin, and then aunties, uncles, cousins, and friends come to say goodbye.
Yes. And did the little boy cry?
No,
He didn't cry. Why didn't he cry?
because Granny is in a better place.
Okay. Do you like this story? I enjoyed this story. I like the way you read the story as well.
But mommy, is that the end?
Well, that's the end of the story. You want to talk some more? What do you want to say? Or you want to read the comments? Okay, so let me tell you what some Uncle Ray's there. Uncle Ray said bravo. Then we have somebody saying great job. Look, Priya is saying, look how she summarized the story very easy. Priya is asking if you could sing again. You want to sing again?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah?
Like,
Okay, we'll find-
everyone.
They want to hear you sing again. So you can talk to them by the time.
Okay.
Say good night, guys.
Good night.
What else you want to tell them?
Shoot.
What do you want to show them, Corinne? Okay, so we're going to find the song.
Everyone, that's not the song.
Wait, I'm not going to do it now.
Everyone, that's not the song.
Okay, so this book, Corinne, tonight we read for the children as part of Read to Me Titi Bedtime Stories. And just to remind everyone, this story was called, what was the name of the story?
Is that my granny?
And it was written and illustrated by Jennylynd James. Where are you going? You're going to sing for them, God? You're going to play the song? Say
But I
properly.
really want to read one more book for them.
What book you want to read?
Let me
Go get one of your small ones quickly.
Is That My Granny? Helps children understand the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. You can order your copy at jennylyndjames.com/books. That's jennylyndjames.com/books. Hello and welcome to Story Time, Facebook Live at 5 with Jennylynd James. Let's wait for a few people to join us and then we'll start our book reading. Hello and welcome. Who's here today? Oh, Mary Jo. Hi. Thanks for joining me. So good to see you through the internet. Thanks for joining. So we're going to wait until 5 o'clock and hopefully a few more people will join us. So how are things with you in Florida? Send me a note. Hello, hello. Long time no see. Of course, we can't see like Zoom, but this is okay. And we have another person joining us. Welcome. Who's out there now? Oh, yes, madness in terms of what? COVID-19 in Florida? Oh, COVID Central. Well, keep safe. Keep very safe. Wear all your protective gear. That's why we have indoor activities these days to keep safe. But anyway, what can we do? Take all the precautions necessary. So we'll wait for a few more minutes and then we'll get started. So here in Ontario, we were expecting a big rain storm with winds, hurricane winds, and threat of a tornado. But so far so good. Everything has just passed away, and we weren't really affected. So I'm glad about that. But we had several warnings today. Right, so just a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get going. It's 5 o'clock by my watch. So welcome and thanks so much for joining our story time today. I'll tell you a little bit about my publications as we get started. So the first book I wrote, first memoir, is called Escape from Ireland. And this talks about what life was like as a new immigrant to Ireland. I lived in Ireland for 7 years. And when I moved to Toronto in 2011, I couldn't get Ireland out of my head, so I had to write about it. So this was the first memoir I published. Then after that, I wrote the memoir called Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. And this talks about what life was like as a newcomer to Toronto. Now, I had studied in Montreal, lived in Quebec for many years as a student, but I never lived in Toronto. So moving here from Ireland was culture shock. And Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire talks about that shock and all the hurdles I had to jump over to settle in a big city like this. Then I wrote the book Red Car Long Legs. And Red Car Long Legs talks about the adventures I had while living and working in California. So I worked in the fresh fruit and vegetable industry in California for about 6 years and had many adventures traveling for work. And it talks about the people who were bound for Hollywood in Southern California, as is the case with many of them. The day job is a shoe salesman, but we really want to be a movie star. So that's what Hollywood is all about. And then Dérivé, we read from this book last week. Dérivé talks about going back home to Trinidad and Tobago, my country of birth, and what it's like returning home. Sometimes I feel like a tourist because everything has changed. And many people have left home and they live in other countries. So Dérivé talks about going back to Trinidad and Tobago and taking foreign friends to Trinidad for a visit. Now today we're going to read from 2 books. Where Are My Car Keys?, which talks about my mother's journey with Alzheimer's disease and how our family coped over the years. And then I'll also read a few passages from Is That My Granny?, which is the children's companion book and the first children's book that I wrote, which addresses the same topic of Alzheimer's disease. A new publication on the way, and my first novel, first fiction, Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. So this is coming up soon. We hope to launch in August 9th. So keep that date handy in your diary. This book talks about dating in North America. 90s, it's set in the 1990s and the early 2000s. From no technology to the full use of technology in dating and finding Mr. Right. So lots of jokes in my new novel that's coming up. So look out for it. Mrs. Somebody. Okay, so we have some more people who just joined us. Welcome. Put your name in the chat box so I'll know who's here. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. What I'm going to do is read the introduction of Where Are My Car Keys? A Mother's Journey with Alzheimer's Disease. Now, I wrote this book when my mom died in 2018 of Alzheimer's disease, and it was a form of healing. It helped me in many ways to cope with losing my mother, because as many of you know, if you lose a parent, it feels like the end of the world, you know. And I've lost both my parents, so sometimes I feel like an orphan, because who can I talk to when I have serious problems? Usually the parent is always there as a stable person for guidance, you know. Yes, so who else is joining us? Oh, Sherry Ann, hello. Hi, Sherry Ann. Who else is here? Put your name in the chat box so I can see. Welcome, welcome. So now let me read the introduction to Where Are My Car Keys? Alzheimer's disease is described as the progressive deterioration of mind, personality, and body caused by the degeneration of the brain. The disease can begin in late middle age and continue into old age, but what starts the brain's deterioration is yet unknown. Learning about another family's journey can sometimes help in understanding and preparing if your loved one is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Everyone is affected by Alzheimer's disease differently, but an emotional roller coaster is an almost universal journey for caregivers and family members. This book describes our family's voyage as our mother, Gloria James, or Mammy as we called her affectionately, battled with Alzheimer's disease over a period of 12 years. It is a collection of stories beginning in 2006 when my siblings and I first acknowledged that our mother's mental and physical state were changing, until her eventual death in January 2018. One of our concerns was that many elderly parents of our peers in Diamond Vale, Digomartin, had also developed Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. We joked about this, saying there must have been something in the water. We saw a pattern that could not be coincidental, and yet, as far as we knew, nobody was researching this trend. The cause of this debilitating condition is unknown. Would I develop the disease if my grandmother, my mother, my uncle, and my aunt all had this condition? Was it truly hereditary? Was it an affliction which plagued people who lived through World War II rations in Trinidad? Was it related to their diet? With so many questions and no answers, it's difficult not to worry. I don't want to become a statistic. Now, I know I have some friends on here who grew up in Diamond Vale, Digomartin. Oh, hi, Mrs. Birch. Hi, Sherry Ann. Hi, Jill. Yes, there's so many coincidences, and many people, even on the street that I grew up on, Pearl Parkway, Diamond Vale, Digomartin, many parents are afflicted or died of Alzheimer's disease. So we don't know if it's regional, if it was something in the diet or the water, but it is a frightening thought. What do you all think? Mary Jo, any comment here? How many people do you know from Diamond Vale who had dementia or Alzheimer's disease? Yes, so leave me a comment in the chat box. All right. Now, I'm going to read about a time when my mother came to visit me while living in Ireland, and the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. So a few short passages from that time period. My mother was turning 77 in 2009, and her friend Kim was a few years her junior. Mommy and Kim had taught at the same secondary school in Port of Spain, Trinidad, and remained friends long after retirement. Kim, from what I remembered, was soft-spoken with a definite twinkle in her eyes. She made jokes sometimes, but always out of earshot when I was growing up. Kim was still very active and physically fit. The years had not been as kind to my mother after retirement, however. Her body was succumbing to arthritis in the knees and hands, but the worst affliction was the degeneration of her mind as a result of Alzheimer's disease. Mommy was losing her confidence and her memory, and recognized the fact that she could no longer travel alone. She had loved to travel frequently in her younger years, jetting to United States, England, or countries around the Caribbean. The whole year had passed without a trip, and I suggested she and Kim come to visit me for Christmas. So they came for a visit. Kim had to be her eyes and ears, of course, because her mind was going. So let me read another passage. They flew from Trinidad to London via Barbados, and then I went to collect them in London and brought them back to Ireland. So it was a really long journey for both of them. Mommy was extremely disoriented and nervous. She spilled her tea on the table in the restaurant when we were getting a little tea before leaving for Dublin. I knew it was a very long day for both of them. As we drove to Waterford, Mommy got more and more agitated. The small roads were long and winding through every town. I knew every bend in the road, but for the unsuspecting traveler, it was grass, forest, trees, bush, and endless bush. "You are taking me in the forest to kill me," Mommy protested. "Where are we going? Put me out now so I could take a taxi home." There was no stopping her, and Kim sat quietly, not knowing what to do. Mercifully, we got home in good time, and we were able to get Mommy settled in the bedroom. "Where am I?" she asked. "How did I get here?" I had to explain about 3 or 4 times how they flew to London via Barbados, and then from London to Dublin, and then we had to drive from Dublin to Tramore. Every time I said Tramore, Mommy said Tramore, Tramore. I said Tramore again, and she said Tramore, Tramore. It was truly funny. So that little passage just describes when my mother and Kim came to visit me in 2009, and it was actually the last international trip my mother had taken. And so much happened on that trip. I will tell you about the one time when I decided to get a night off from babysitting or adult sitting, my mom and Kim and my daughter. So I went out on New Year's Eve, or Old Year's Night as we call it in Trinidad. And while I was packing my bags to leave for the night, Kim and Mommy showered me with advice on what I should wear. "You must wear stockings. You can't have your legs out. That dress is too short," they said. "You should have chosen something else," said Mommy. "You can't wear such tiny underwear," said Mommy. I told her it's called a G-string. She said, "Oh, that's so commonplace and low class for a lady. I'll lend you one of mine." "Mommy, yours may be too big for me," I told her. "I'll use what I have." Tiffany couldn't stop laughing at the old grannies as they helped me prepare for my one night off. I left Kim in charge of the home with extra food in the refrigerator and ideas for what meals they could prepare the next day. Kim wanted to go for a walk around the small town of Tremor, and I agreed since she was fit and needed some exercise. Free at last, my friend and I drove happily out of town. We were excited for the upcoming night of fun. It was to be a large dinner and dance with hats and whistles, and the opportunity to stay overnight at Clontarf Castle in Dublin. Reports of the pending heavy snowfall filled the airwaves, but not much had fallen by the time we were on the highway to Dublin. Just as we passed Kilcullen exit in County Kildare, I got a phone from my neighbor in Tremor. She said Kim had fallen down in front of my house and couldn't walk, and they had to call the ambulance. So can you imagine? I left Kim in charge of my mother and my daughter to have one night off. One night. And disaster came. She fell and she actually broke her hip. She broke her hip, and I had to rush back down from Dublin the next day. So in the book, you'll read all about the drama that happened. If you get a copy of Where Are My Khakis, lots of drama with the broken hip and the hospital, and you know, I was out of town, lots of drama. But what happened in the end, before I could even get back to Dublin, Kim had hip replacement surgery. And she had to remain in hospital for quite a while. But my mother's plane ticket was about to expire, and she had to go back to Trinidad. So I'll tell you all what happened. The hospital was ready to discharge Kim, but I couldn't take care of her. We had a long flight of steps just to enter the front door of my home, and Kim couldn't walk, and all the bedrooms were on the second floor of the house. So the hospital agreed to keep her until she recovered. Since Kim couldn't use her ticket to return to Trinidad, I'd made arrangements to book her on a later flight. In the meantime, my mother also had to go back to Trinidad. Winter was no good for her, and I had to start back working. The dilemma was how she would travel alone to Trinidad. My brother and I decided to do a relay of sorts. I would ensure that she boarded the plane to Barbados at Gatwick Airport in the UK. Then he would fly to Barbados to meet her when she landed and collect her in time to change planes for Trinidad. Every flight had to be well timed, as I handed her over in a wheelchair in London, England. I kept asking the attendant to make sure she got on the airplane. I didn't want her walking around the airport alone. When I told the attendant this, she hit me and pretended that I was being extra careful with her, and she made jokes with the attendants and winked and pinched me. She declared that she wasn't a child and she didn't need assistance. Can you imagine? As I flew back to Ireland, I had visions of my mother walking around Gatwick Airport and not boarding that airline. I couldn't sleep for the whole night until I knew she was safe with my brother and he had met her at the airport in Barbados. I tried calling him numerous times, but of course he couldn't answer because he was flying. Finally, the next day, I got news that all was well and Mommy was back in her home. But her trip wasn't without drama. He found my mother wandering around outside of the airport in Barbados because she thought she had arrived home in Trinidad and she was going to take a taxi home. So what do you all think about that? The relay with my mother to drop her off at one point, make sure she boarded the plane. Then my brother had to fly to Barbados and collect her. Put in the chat box what you think about that relay, human relay. It was a very difficult decision to make, but we had little choice. So somebody tell me, would you have done a relay like that if it was your parent? Put a comment in the chat box. Let me hear. Let me hear what you think. Now remember, she wasn't thinking straight. She was completely disoriented and didn't know where she was. But, however, when I was trying to get her with assistance in Gatwick Airport, I mean, nobody, the attendants wouldn't believe that she couldn't think for herself, because she was pinching me and acting normal. So everybody thought she was normal. Okay, WIS, good old Barbados. My favorite, not so favorite place. Realistic and scary. Yes, Mrs. Birch. And we were very lucky that it worked out, because she walked out of the airport. She was walking home to Diamond Vale to go Martin, for all she knew. Yes, it was quite a scary prospect. And thank goodness it worked out for us. Now I'm going to read a passage from when my sister, who lived in the United States for many, many years. Oh, hi Colette, glad that you're there. I'm going to read about when my sister attempted to move back to Trinidad and help my mother. Okay, yes, so people say yes, they would do the same thing if they had to. Now, this passage called Colette Moves Back. So, hi Colette, I'm going to read about your trials and tribulations with Mommy. My sister was not happy with her situation in the United States and decided to move back to Trinidad. She packed lock, stock, and barrel in 2011 with her son Kadir and took up residence in Gloria's house. At first, it seemed like the best idea. She would be able to keep an eye on my mother to ensure that she didn't harm herself, as Alzheimer's disease continued to affect her mind and body. This decision proved to be a nightmare, however. My mother was quite attached to her car, and after a while she started fighting and challenging anyone who asked to use it. Colette had to get a job soon and also her own vehicle. When she decided to clean the house and renovate many areas that were in various states of disrepair, it caused a lot of problems. Mommy had accumulated clothing, kitchenware, trinkets, and many disposable items as she became obsessive and lived alone. One had to fight her to clear debris out of the house. Colette also brought her own things in the house, so she had to sort everything out and remove old or derelict items without my mother knowing. On many occasions, my mother would say, go back wherever you came from. Stop throwing away my things or I'll knock you over. If you throw away my things, I will knock you over. Go back where you came from. So redecorating the house was a grueling task, but Colette managed to bring the home back to its former glory. Many verbal fights ensued, with my mother threatening my sister physically. Colette called to tell me she had hidden all the knives in the house in a place where my mother could never find them. Colette had to sleep with one eye open because during the night my mother walked around making mischief. It was another symptom of Alzheimer's disease. Another point of contention was that Colette had a lock installed on the bedroom door. It was the room that we occupied as children, and my mother always wanted to go rummaging through her belongings or misplacing important documents. So before going to work, Colette had to be sure that that door was locked. This irritated Mommy, who complained that it was her house and she should be allowed to enter any room she wanted. One day, my mother removed the louvers at the south end of the bedroom, and she climbed into the room and unlocked the door so she could access the bedroom. This made Colette really mad, because when she returned for work that day, the door was wide open and a few items were moved out of place. My mother was in her garden happily tending to her plants and had completely forgotten that she climbed into the room. And she left all the telltale louvers on the floor beside the window. Another day, the neighbor told Colette that Mommy came over to ask her grandson Giovanni to climb through the window to open the locked door. That weekend, Colette arranged for a handyman to completely seal the back window with concrete blocks while Mommy was out. She then reinstalled the curtain over the area, and there was a lot of fretting and threatening when agile Mommy found the area permanently sealed and she couldn't climb in. So what do you all think about that? Let me see. Natasha said, glad your mother made it home safe and sound. Yes, we were happy that you got there safely. Yes, so what do you all think about my mother being agile enough to climb through a window to open a door that was locked? She wanted to be able to enter every room in her house. It was her house, and she had to enter. Tell me what you all think about that. Because she could climb. She had no problem. She was as strong as ever at that stage. You know, the early stages in the disease, she was quite strong and always up to mischief. Tell me in the chat box what you thought about that story. Imagine having to seal up the windows to prevent her from climbing in. Because you could never tell, all your documents would go missing and she wouldn't know where she put them. She just wouldn't know. Such is the nature of the disease. Mischief, forgetfulness, and sometimes, just violence. For some Alzheimer's patients, they become violent, which is what we've seen with what we saw with our mother. Defiant. Yes, she was extremely defiant. Now, some might ask where are my khakis, where did that name come from? So I'm going to tell you. My mother would spend time milling around her home, which she knew well, but we didn't trust her driving around town. She was, however, very attached to her car. Several copies of car keys and house keys were made so my brother and the neighbor could keep copies in case Mommy locked herself out. She was also equipped with a cell phone to call my brother in case of an emergency. Needless to say, he was bombarded with phone calls while in meetings at work or on the road. Sometimes she would call him to ask where she was supposed to be going and other strange questions. She even called me in Ireland when I lived there one day to ask me where she was supposed to be going because she was dressed and she had no idea why she was dressed and where she was going. It was funny. We should have been worried about her driving early on, but at that time we weren't too bothered. The feeling was that she wouldn't go too far. Her favorite drive was to a roti shop on the Diego Martin main road. She would go through the back of Diamond Vale to get home. During one of my visits to Trinidad, she asked me if I wanted a roti and proceeded to drive to her favorite place. Her driving was erratic at times and I had to block my eyes with my hands in fear. But we made it to the destination unscathed. My mother drove skillfully into the tiny parking lot in front of the roti shop and walked through the wide open doors like she owned the shop. So during this visit, it was 11:30 a.m. and a few patrons were on site buying their lunch. The attendants at the counter smiled when they saw Miss Gloria. She boasted to them that I was her daughter visiting from the cold, and they smiled gleefully as my mother ordered 2 bone chicken rotis. They know me here, she told them, or she told me. I found out later that they knew her so well that sometimes she came with short change, like $5 to purchase a $15 roti. But they forgave her because she was an old regular, and they possibly recognized that she suffered from some form of dementia. Backing the car onto Diego Martin main road after shopping was tricky for any driver, but Mommy drove with confidence and screamed at anyone who challenged her. Let him drive over me. And this is how she would put her finger. Over me. He can drive over me. She would yell at the blowing car horns like a homing pigeon. And by a miracle, in my opinion, she would easily get through a side road into Diamond Vale and back to her house. So what do you all think about that? Driving onto the Diego Martin main road to get a roti. That is what my mother did. Because she loved her car and she loved roti and she was going to get her roti, no matter what. Diane, the car situation. Oh yes. So Diane, you're familiar with that story. And we're forgetting where they're going. Oh yes. But she always liked to dress up and go out. And you know, half car will travel. She had to dress up and go out. And many times she knew she had a meeting or something, but by the time she was dressed, she didn't know where she was going, unfortunately. My cousin Ricky warned us about my mother's driving, saying she was a danger to herself and the general public. As we tried to wean Mommy away from her car and driving on the roads, Colette started giving her the wrong car keys. This trick enraged my mother as she tried to open the car and the keys wouldn't work. She would then complain to Colette that the keys were not working, and Colette would just say, "Oh, I don't understand why." This was the ultimate deceit, but we were afraid that she would get into an accident while driving. My mother had also become very stingy with her car when we visited on vacation, and she proclaimed loudly that nobody could use her car unless she was in it, and we had to go back wherever we came from and get our own car. Since her vehicle was parked in the garage most of the time, I attempted once to use it to go for a swim, and she threatened to chop me. She snatched the car keys, which are usually placed in a green glass bowl on top of the refrigerator, and ran with them to her bedroom. I followed in hot pursuit, and I watched her put the keys in a jewelry box on her dressing table. I then walked away quickly before she could realize that I knew where the keys were hidden. Just as predicted, within half an hour, she had forgotten where the keys were hidden. I took the keys from the jewelry box and kept them in my own room. When I asked Mommy where I could find the keys, she headed for the glass bowl on top of the fridge, which was the usual resting place for the keys. Not finding them, she raised the alarm and looked all around the house frantically. Where are my car keys? Where are my car keys? I have to go to buy a roti. Lindy, where are my car keys? She asked. Well, I'm sure they're wherever you left them, I said in mischief. So it takes two to tango, and she loved mischief, so I gave her some of her own medicine. When we felt she could no longer care for herself, I hid the car keys and never gave them back. It was a terrible thing to do, and I felt guilty. It was so sad to watch as my mother bawled like a baby, not being able to find her car keys. Her independence was stripped away abruptly. She loved driving, and she would recognize that car long into the final stages of Alzheimer's disease when she no longer knew who I was. Let's see. What do you all think about that, the driving? Oh, hi, Nancy. Good to see you. Oh, yes, Carol, let them drive over me. That's what she would say. Anybody who wanted to pass her or even blew a horn at her car, she'd say, drive over me. That was her favorite. Yes, but what do we all think about taking away her car keys? We had to do it. We had to do it. She loved to drive, but she was a danger to herself and the general public, unfortunately. So hence the name of the book. Because we knew she loved to drive, and taking away her car keys was like the ultimate loss of independence for a driver. All right, now I'm going to read about a few passages about when my mother lived at a senior's home. So she was staying at one senior's home, and things didn't work out. We were not too pleased with the care she was receiving there. So after a long stay in the hospital and trying to revive her, she was moved to another senior's home. And this was up in the hills in Maracas, St. Joseph. So every year I would go around December and try to have a nice birthday party for her. Her birthday is December 29th. And so we'd have a nice birthday party every year, December 29th. By 2017, we could sense my mother's swift demise and possible end. Most of the staff at the seniors' home had left, and a series of new helpers would come and go. They were probably not willing to make that journey or not committed to this type of difficult work. Only 2 faithful staff members remain from the original people we met when my mother first started going there. I visited in April, and it was a good time as any to sit with my mother, look at pictures, and read stories. In April 2017, her body was weak and fragile, and her ability to focus was gone. I couldn't get any response when I called on the phone, so it was better to visit with her in person and hold her skinny hands. She had whittled down from a robust woman into a shell of herself. Her eyes sometimes searched mine when I called her name. She recognized her name, Gloria. One time she touched me in recognition while I spoke to my daughter on the cell phone. It was as if she was saying that I should speak to her instead of spending time on the phone. We all felt the end was near, but I still hoped that she could hold on longer, just a little longer, to celebrate her 85th birthday and meet the new year. So in 2017, we knew that the end was coming. Let's see. Also, we have some comments here about the driving. Yes, it was for her own safety and others. Yes, you know, when the elderly parent is attached to or likes to go out, as my mother did, dress up and go out all the time, taking away the car keys was really, truly a loss of independence. What I'm going to read now is the last birthday party, which was December 2017. So in December 2017, my brother had a big birthday party, and I came home the first week in December to celebrate. And I thought, well, I couldn't return to Toronto, then go back for December 29th. So I thought I'd have my mother's birthday party, which would have been her 85th birthday, December 2017. So I decided to celebrate her birthday right after my brother's birthday. Why are you going through all this trouble? Asked my sister. Because I want to, I said. I would feel riddled with guilt if I didn't have some kind of celebration for my mother, and she died before or around the time of her birthday. My motivation may have been guilt from not living in Trinidad to see her regularly. However, I felt it was necessary to celebrate her fragile existence and make sure everybody else joined me at the party. Many of her friends who were still in contact couldn't come for one reason or the next, and I was very upset with them. Didn't they know my mother's birthday was extremely important to me? With my single focus, I assumed that everybody else would drop whatever they were doing and accommodate my program. Of course, this was unreasonable. One of my mom's best friends, too, had another outing to go to, and she decided that she would come on December 29th and celebrate with Mommy. So I enlisted the help of Letitia and Elizabeth, two friends, to come with me and do party preparation. I alerted the owner of the seniors' home in advance to have the staff clean the living room, especially the fabric furniture, which always seemed to have the lingering smell of the last few residents that sat in them. I bought hors d'oeuvres and a birthday cake at the nearby supermarket and got lots of juices and drinks to prepare for my mom's birthday party. I wanted to give her a little gift, but for someone who could barely speak at that stage and couldn't walk and had little or no appetite, what gift could one possibly get? I headed to the Eastern Main Road just an hour before the party was supposed to start to find a simple gift at one of the stores. My idea was to get a doll to hug or a stuffed toy. On entering a party supply store, the associate took me around to see their selection of stuffed toys. Eventually, I picked a brown teddy bear with a red heart that held the words, "I love you," in front. The store clerk said, "I hope your daughter likes the teddy bear." It was then I told him the teddy was for my mother, who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease and needed something to hug. The young man became visibly shaken and hung his head down. He could barely speak to me after that. I was so surprised to see the effect these words had on him. "Don't worry," I said. "She's like a big child. She would love the teddy bear. Don't feel sad for her. Thanks for helping me." How could a total stranger feel so sad? This made me feel like crumbling and crying for my mother right there too. I felt like I was going to fall on the ground. She had been such a tough woman in her youth and was now reduced to having a child's mind. So what do you all think about that? What would you get? What sort of gift could you possibly get for somebody who couldn't walk, couldn't speak, was on their last leg, literally? Put in the chat box what gift you think you would get if you had to make such a decision. And anybody here, any of the listeners, anybody had to deal with a parent who has Alzheimer's disease or any form of dementia? Put it in the chat box. Let me know. Anybody? Just leave a comment in the chat box. Okay, so I'll just finish off by telling you all what happened, and my attitude at the time. We either laughed or we cried. We chose to laugh at many of the situations. So while we waited for friends to arrive at the party, the staff at the seniors' home dressed my mother in a red and white batik party dress. "Gloria, Gloria, happy birthday. We're having a party for you," we said. She only lifted her head up when we called her name, and then she hung her head back down. Poor Mommy may have been in pain, but we would never know. She opened her eyes, looked around briefly, smiling at the crowd. Then she hung her head back down. I presented her with her stuffed toy, and she looked at it and smiled. Before I knew it, Mommy had bit into the face of the teddy bear. Like a baby who puts everything in her mouth, she was actually biting the teddy bear. If we didn't laugh, we would cry. "No, Mommy, no, don't bite the teddy," I screamed. Just hug it, just hug it. I tried to make her hug the toy, but this was in vain. She may have been hungry or just acting on instinct. Again, we would never know. My sister gave her a bunch of flowers and said, "Happy birthday, Mommy." She held the flowers and must have bitten into them too when we were not looking, because we saw petals falling out of her mouth. The gift giving turned out to be a disaster. But we were not deterred. We sang the happy birthday song loudly with the help of friends and some of the staff. We cut up the cake, fixed plates of food for all the residents at the home, and I tried to feed Mommy with some of the food. So what do you all think about that? Trying to, I would say, literally force a birthday party onto my mom. I know it was, as I mentioned, my guilt of not living in Trinidad. I just wanted to do something while she was still alive, so I staged a birthday party. Okay, Natasha said she could give lipstick or something that they don't remember having. Hey, that's a good idea. Mrs. Bird said, "My mother enjoyed when I took her for a drive." Yes, yes. But at that stage, we had stopped driving her around because she couldn't walk, and getting her into a car would have been a challenge. Okay, so Mrs. Bird said her mother liked to sit at the piano because she had been a pianist and organist. Yes, those are good ideas. But at that stage, my mother, I don't think she could even sing or listen to music. She was a music teacher for years, and yet she didn't respond when they had musical activities at the seniors' home. Okay, so Diane said her mom is experiencing some early stages. Yes, that's what happens. And we have to be very patient with the patient. And I tell people to be careful what you say in front of the Alzheimer's patient, because they hear everything and they respond afterwards. So if you imagine they're not understanding what you're saying, think again. Because we had one case of that with my mother. She looked around at many things, said nothing, and then a day after, she responded. So you have to be very careful what you say in front of the Alzheimer's patient. You treat them like a regular human being, literally. Don't say anything bad about them in their presence, because they're listening and processing the information in their own way. We have to be careful. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to read near the end of the book. I have written what I call a victim statement. So it's a long poem or prose talking about what my mother was thinking, or what I imagined she was thinking through this whole period. So I'm just going to read the last part of the victim statement. It's like a victim impact statement. The last stage before she died, she was in the hospital taking her last breath, literally, hooked up to machines. So this is what I imagined she thought. It's painful. I can't speak. The room is quiet. She comes to visit. Mommy, I'm your daughter. I came to see you. Are you okay? She holds my hand and cries, "Who is my daughter?" More people come to visit and look at me. I can't open my eyes now. I can feel their presence. A large group is there. Gloria, everyone came to see you. Lindy, Colette, Brent, Audrey, Kenrick. They talk loudly at my bedside. Too much noise, too much noise. They're so loud. He pinches my toe. Ouch! I move my leg. I can feel my foot. So much pain. My body is heavy and cold. I can't hold on. They are all looking at me. The next day, the doctor speaks to all of them. I can hear them. We recommend palliative care. She'll never get better. Give permission for no resuscitation. She could die any day now. What does that mean? Is it time to give up? I'm hungry. The pamper is dirty. I can't move. My head is lying on one side, my two arms spread out. Some familiar voices are arguing. At least they could have changed her. They didn't even feed her by syringe. The food is still sitting there. She has bed sores. Oh my God, they're wicked in this hospital. The oxygen mask is digging into her eye. Fix it, fix it. She's been in that same position for 2 days and nobody even fixed the mask. Move her body to the other side. Oh, so much noise and shouting. 2 people clean me and I'm lying on the next side. I still can't breathe. There's a machine, there's a tube hooked up to me. I can't open my eyes. Who are all these people? They hug me and then they say goodbye. They all leave me alone. I know they love me. I want to die. I am tired. I can't breathe. Drifting. No more pain. The end. So that is the end of Where Are My Car Keys? Where Are My Car Keys? A Mother's Journey with Alzheimer's Disease. And so at the end of the book, I write the victim's statement of what I think she was seeing and hearing when we were all there at her bedside in the hospital. And we can only imagine, because she actually moved slightly while we were all at her bedside, and she hadn't moved for a long time. So we think she was hearing us. So I put in the chat box, jennylyndjames.com/books. Here you can find out information on all my books. What do you all think about this? How many people here? I know Diane said her mother is suffering or has the early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. Anybody else? Let me know what you think. Put a comment in the chat box. And please remember to like my Facebook page. That is the end of our presentation today. So please like my Facebook page, Jennylynd James Writer. Check out my website and subscribe to my website as well, so you can get alerts when we have the next book reading. So that's the end of my presentation today. Where are my car keys? And as I said, I wrote this book as a form of healing when my mother died, because it helps me to deal with all that happened. And it was over 12 years that we saw our mother go down slowly. So it was a long and drawn out period. But writing the book certainly helped a lot with the healing process. You're most welcome, Diane. I'm very happy to share the story with others because, as I said, it helped me in my journey for healing, and I think the book could possibly help others because many people have parents or loved ones who are going through this affliction. As I mentioned, I also have Is That My Granny? I won't read from this, but I have on my YouTube channel, a little girl from Trinidad read this beautifully and she understood the meaning. So it talks about my mother's journey again through the eyes of my nephew, who saw her slow demise over the years and her change in mood and her body and everything. So the book, the children's book, describes the same story, and it's good to if you want to initiate a discussion on Alzheimer's disease with a child, this book is very useful to start a discussion, because children see everything. They know what's going on. You can't hide it from them because, you know, they observe. So it's good to have a discussion with children if they have a grandparent or great-grandparent who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to subscribe to my Facebook page, Jennylynd James Writer. And also check out my website, jennylyndjames.com, books, and subscribe to my website as well. And there you can learn about all the books. Now I have a new novel coming up, Mrs. Somebody. So keep your calendars free. August 9th, we will be launching Mrs. Somebody. What she did for that ring. So it's full of jokes and lots of dating stories and what women would do to find Mr. Right. So I hope you keep August 9th free for the book launch. All right, I want to see you at the book launch on August 9th, Mrs. Somebody. Thank you so much, everybody, and goodbye. Thanks so much for spending your Sunday evening with me. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Jasmine leaves home for university and wonders how many boys she would sleep with before finding a husband. Joining 4 other girls, the quest to become Mrs. Somebody continues as they graduate, moving to jobs in the big city. Trials of internet courtships, speed dating, matchmakers, and chance encounters bring our heroines into the messy world of romance. Stories of passionate pursuit reveal the great lengths some women would go to get that ring and beats the biological clock. Is the search more interesting than marriage? Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring.
Hello. Who's joined me? Getting ready for some lively book readings this afternoon. Hello and welcome. We're just waiting for a few people to come and we're going to start at 5 o'clock. Hello, Mrs. Birch. Good to see you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. Grab yourself a glass. I have a glass of bubbly water. Don't really drink alcohol, but in celebration, a glass of Perrier. Okay, so let's wait for a minute or two. Let's see. Someone shows up, another person shows up. It's really sunny outside. So I know everybody's out there enjoying the sunshine this afternoon. All right, so 5 o'clock, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for the book reading of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. I'm really excited. It's my first fiction, first romance novel. So it's a great, exciting time to be writing fiction. So what I'll do, now that we've started, oh hi Colette, good to see you. I'm first going to introduce you to my books for those who will tune in and they not familiar with all the books I've written over the years. First I'll start with an introduction to the books. So the first book I wrote was Escape from Ireland, and this describes adventures in Ireland when I lived there for almost 7 years as a new immigrant. Couldn't get Ireland out of my head, so I had to write about it. Lots of jokes in this book and adventures in Ireland. The next book I wrote, Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire, and this talks about what it was like as a newcomer to Toronto. So I left Ireland during the recession and moved to the big city of Toronto. So this book talks about surviving in the big city and the culture shock. The next one I wrote is called Red Car Long Legs, Adventures in California and Beyond. And Red Car Long Legs talks about when I lived in Southern California and I traveled frequently to Central and South America for work. Lots of adventure in this book. Another publication, Dérivé or Dérivé in French. And Dérivé talks about what it's like going back to Trinidad and Tobago, my country of birth, and visiting over the years. I left in 1992 and everything has changed. So Dérivé, a Trini expat comes home. I talk about going back for Carnival, going back for Christmas, my dad's funeral, different occasions, and also taking foreign friends back to visit. So Dérivé, a Trini expat comes home. Another publication, Where Are My Car Keys? I wrote this book when my mother died of Alzheimer's disease, and of course she was elderly too. She died at 85. But this book was a form of healing for me. It helped to cope with my mother's death. And I talk about how our family coped over the years when we saw her slow demise to Alzheimer's disease. I also wrote the children's companion book, Is That My Granny? As told through the eyes of my nephew. My nephews watched their grandmother as she suffered from Alzheimer's disease and her body changed, her character changed. So Is That My Granny? It's my first illustrated children's book, and it can be used to help explain the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease to small children, because children observe everything, and it would be good to let them know what's going on, but in a simple way. If you have a grandparent or great-grandparent who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. So these are some of the books that I've published over the years. And the new one I have a blown-up version of the cover here. Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring. So it's my first fiction. Now, let me see. I'm going to show you the book trailer. So let's get that going. I'm going to share the screen with you and see if you see the trailer. Yeah, let's see how we're going to do that. Oh, it's not coming up. Are you seeing the trailer? Tell me in the comment section. Please tell me if you're seeing the book trailer in the comment section. Hi Jill, hi Judith. Good to see you. Right, now I don't, let's see. The trailer is not coming up. That's okay. What I'll do, I will read the back of the book, what we have as a description on the back of the book. Jasmine leaves home for university and wonders how many boys she will sleep with before finding a husband. Joining 4 other girls, the quest to become Mrs. Somebody continues as they graduate, moving to jobs in the big city. Trials of internet courtship, speed dating, matchmakers, and chance encounters bring our heroines into the messy world of romance. Stories of passion and pursuit reveal the great lengths some women would go to get that ring and beat the biological clock. Is the search more exciting than marriage? That is the question throughout the book. So I'm going to read a snippet from the introduction, which tells you a little bit about the chapters in the book. Mrs. Somebody is loosely based on true stories of women I met in my travels spanning the 1990s and through the 2000s. I may have been a good listener over the years because many women would ply me with tales about their dating exploits. And I managed to keep a mental note of some of the sketches which I've used in writing this novel. The plot follows the lives of 5 young women who met in university, and they continue their friendship after graduating into the working world. The novel contains subtle and not so subtle examples of human behavior in North America in the dating and relationship scene. Some would consider this behavior bizarre in other cultures. This includes the lucrative industries built up around using cosmetics and adjusting the aging body to regain its youthful appearance. Mrs. Somebody also shows the tug-of-war between contemporary and traditional values, as the questions asked throughout the book are, when will I get married? What should I do next to get married? So that's a snippet from the introduction. And I'll now start with some of the chapters. 2 minutes. you again, everyone, for joining this afternoon. I know you could be many places, so I'm really happy that you joined me today. And for a reward, I'm going to give everybody on the chat a chance to get a copy of the ebook. So I'm going to put my website. Hi, Sachi. I'll put my website. And if you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com books, I'll have your email and I'll send you a copy of the ebook as a prize, as a reward for joining me this afternoon. How about that? So thank you very much. Now I'm going to read from the first chapter, which I call Freedom. Now remember, we're starting with 18-year-olds. They're just leaving school and all the excitement of going into university. So this is Jasmine, who is the protagonist throughout the book. Wouldn't it be exciting to have a different boyfriend every day of the week? Jasmine asked herself this question as she applied to university in Walter Mac. Even though she considered her household liberal compared to others, she still never felt confident enough to bring boys home because of the scrutiny of her parents and brother. Living on campus offered the opportunity to explore and experiment, and she was determined to make the most of this. Many of her friends were staying close to home and possibly attending the local community college. As her family drove her to Walter Mac University in a small town, everything looked small and neat, and the main street had more bars and restaurants than she'd ever seen in a small area. Jasmine envisioned large crowds of students partying at the bars as her family drove past. When they got to Bennett House, Jasmine stepped back to take a good look at the building. It was a large red brick 5-story structure that housed at least 300 students. Each room came furnished, and she had selected a shared room to have company during her first year. Each floor also had shared bathrooms and a living space where students frequented the TV room. The building also housed a large cafeteria. Jasmine, don't forget to wear clean clothes every day, said her mother. And don't just eat from the dessert bar in the cafeteria. Remember to pick some nutritious vegetables too. Oh, Mom, you're acting like I'm a child. I'm an adult, remember? Jasmine protested. Her brother chimed in too. Mind your manners, Jazz. Can't believe it, but I think I might actually miss you. He gave her a hug, and Jasmine's father hugged his big baby girl. She could swear she saw his eyes water up a bit, but he was hiding it. After long farewells, many hugs and tearful goodbyes, Jasmine's family left and she was on her own for the first time. She tried to figure out how to cope, and in a daze, she walked around the cafeteria for something to eat. She was crying. She would have to see all the people around her another day, not that day. As she entered the bathroom down the hallway, an Asian girl walked in. "Hello, I'm Fanny," she said. Jasmine held up her hand and waved sadly. "Where are you from, Fanny?" "I came from Malaysia," she said with a thick accent. "First time, no family. I'm very sad." Jasmine told Fanny it was her first time alone too. She suddenly realized her situation was not unique. Many other students were alone and they just had to grow up. So how many people here in the chat? Oh, hi, Joanne. How many people here had that experience of going to university and being alone for the first time? Just tell me in the chat box. Put a message there. How many of you had that experience? You know, you leave home at 18 or 19. Put a message for me in the chat box. Yes, anybody? Put a message. many listeners have lived in student housing? You know how crazy it could be in student housing. Okay. So now I'm going to, oh yes, Jill, that was you, yes. Student housing, student parties. We're going to read about some of them now, because all the girls start off in the dorm on campus. So this chapter, or this section, is called First Try. It wasn't long before Jasmine met an extremely good-looking international student, Arif from Pakistan. Arif was the student mentor and house supervisor at the dorm. He was in graduate school and he had a charismatic flair. All the girls liked him. He was tall and muscular with longish hair that hung in front of his right eye, and he would constantly brush the hair away with one hand when speaking to a student. This drove the girls wild. "Hi, Arif. How you doing?" said a group of second-year students as they passed him in the hall, giggling. "Oh, hi there, I'm fine," he responded, not actually noticing their gushing admiration. Jasmine observed their behavior and wondered if it would be out of her league to go on a date with this amazing hunk, Arif. She asked around the dorm, and according to the grapevine, he was actually single and looking for a girlfriend. That was enough encouragement for Jasmine to plan a strategy to meet him. Arif was available by appointment to help new students settle on campus and orient them on campus activities and clubs. He was also available to manage disputes at the dorm. Jasmine formulated an elaborate complaint and a list of needs in order to meet him. She got dressed in her most revealing sheer crop top and tight jeans and applied a generous amount of makeup before the appointment time. And then she went down to the student lounge smelling as sweet as a rose. Arif noticed this beautiful girl who came to speak with him and was visibly infatuated. He tried his best to give Jasmine all the pointers she needed on clubs to join on campus and how to make friends. He doubted she would have any problems in making friends, since she looked like an extrovert and she was very beautiful. Jasmine continued to find reasons to speak to Arif every second day, fantasizing about going out with him and kissing him. She couldn't understand why he wouldn't ask her out. Eventually, her desire got the better of her and she decided she would just have to ask him out. She didn't yet trust anyone on campus to tell her stories, so she just went bravely one evening and asked him to go out to the pub. Arif was flattered. Usually, he didn't accept advances from girls on campus. However, he decided to make an exception for Jasmine, the tall, beautiful brunette from the 3rd floor. They sipped sodas at a side booth in one of the local pubs near the campus. The place was relatively quiet since it was a Tuesday night, and this suited Jasmine just fine because she had his undivided attention. They chat about studies, campus life, and all the time Jasmine wondered how she would seduce Arif and get a big hug from those strong arms. He looked like he exercised in the gym regularly and his muscles protruded from the front of a small blue t-shirt. Eventually, Jasmine threw herself on his chest and looking up like a small child asked him for a hug. He obliged by giving her a friendly hug, but wanted to keep a polite distance. Jasmine couldn't help herself. Arif was so cute, and eventually she said, "You have the strongest arms," and she snuggled up next to him. He put his arms around her shoulders as they watched the guitarist play music on one side of the pub. Jasmine tried, but she couldn't listen to the music. She was too busy looking at Arif's lips and hoping to get a kiss. They went back to the dorm and Jasmine invited Arif to her room. To find out what happens next, you have to get yourself a copy of Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring. Ooh! So what you all think about Jasmine inviting the dorm monitor up to her room? What do you think happened? Put it in the chat box. Let me see what you think happened. Huh? Anybody? Put it in the chat box. Cheers! I'm drinking some bubbly water. Oh, it occurred, Jasmine. Yeah. What did Jasmine do? Okay, so now I'm going to read about how Jasmine met and made friends. In her third week of classes, Jasmine was able to quickly develop a network of girlfriends. The lecturer of the introductory business class randomly placed students into groups for an assignment. Each group was supposed to meet during the week to decide on a topic, divide responsibilities for research, and develop a class presentation. Jasmine's group consisted of Ariam, Carla, Winsome, and Lara. The girls exchanged phone numbers and decided to meet the following evening at the Student Union building, which was in a central location on campus. When they finally sat down around a table to go through the details of the project, they also excitedly exchanged stories of how they came to Walter Mack University. Jasmine said, well, I grew up in Coyle, which is not too far from this part of the state, and I'm staying in Bennett Hall. Lara, a tall redhead with pallid skin, spoke up next. She stood at 5 feet 10 inches tall and was curvy by conventional standards. She had long, wild, curly hair. Well, let me tell you about myself, said the short black girl in the group. Winsome was born in the Caribbean and moved to Walter Mack to go to university. Her parents were from a wealthy family in Barbados, and they wanted their daughter to go to school abroad. She had studied diligently in her final school year, so her grades were very good, and she gained a scholarship to study at any university of her choice. People in her family circles like to send their children overseas to university. The next was Carla. Carla said, I'm just from a few miles away from Walter Mack. Carla was of Slavic background. Her parents immigrated from Czech Republic, settling in the town of Walter Mack. I guess I'm last with the intros, said the shy Asian girl in the group. I'm Ariam, and I was born in California. My parents are from Korea, and we moved to a town 4 hours east of Walter Mack when my dad got a job there. The girls lived in different student residence halls, but met a few times in the following weeks at the Student Union building to discuss their project. Eventually, they developed a great rapport and decided to continue meeting when the class project was done. This was so they could go out to campus events and other activities in the university town. This is so exciting, said Ariam. I can actually go out until 3 in the morning and nobody's around to scold me for being late. Yes. Let's go to all the frat parties this semester. So many boys, so little time, laughed Jasmine. "Oh, I don't know about that," said Lara, who was a little cautious. "Remember, we're here to study, right?" "Well, I don't know about you, but I'm also here to get my MRS," said Carla. "What's your MRS? Is that a degree too?" They all laughed. "We certainly have 4 years to test the waters." So how many people have heard that term before? The MRS degree. Have you all heard that? Tell me in the chat box. Did you know people who went to university specifically to get the MRS? Because I met a few like that in my day. Put it in the chat box. And for those who didn't hear the first time I announced it, just for participating today, everybody gets a free copy of my book, an e-copy. So if you subscribe to my website, I put a link in the chat box. I will send you a free e-copy, because when you subscribe to my website, I get your email address and I'll send you a copy of the ebook. So that's our giveaway today. Sachi said no, so you've never met somebody searching for the MRS degree. Oh, I met quite a few in university. It was quite the thing at the time. All right. So now I'll tell you about some more campus shenanigans. Jasmine met with her classmates again to plan their social activities for the coming weeks. "I heard that foreign guys are the best ones to date," said Carla. "Where did you get that idea from?" asked Jasmine. "Well, that's what some of my older cousins told me, so I believe them." "Well, girls, let's just go out there and see who we can find." Jasmine's dorm had a party that weekend in the large cafeteria, and all the tables and chairs were going to be removed. People from all over campus were invited, so it was going to be a grand event. She invited her new girlfriends to the shindig and made them promise not to stand too close if she was making moves on a new guy. The girls felt it was the ideal time to discover who the potential husbands could be. The theme of the night was Toga Fest, so everybody was going to be dressed in bed sheets and cloths. Jasmine made up her mind that night if she met a boy she liked, she was going all the way. The walls of the hall were decorated with branches, and white helium balloons were scattered throughout the venue. 2 large strobe lights in front of the DJ scattered patterns of light throughout the room as the loud music pounded from speakers placed strategically around the room. Jasmine was wearing her toga, a ton of makeup, and a big smile. They all noticed her for sure. When her girlfriends arrived, they screamed, "Party time!" and dashed onto the dance floor. This was supposed to be an alcohol-free environment, but some students had a few kegs of beer and bottles of vodka in nearby rooms. For $1, one could get a shot or spike a glass of orange juice and return undetected to the hall where some older students were monitoring the event. Jasmine, Lara, Ariam, Winsome, and Carla became tipsy quickly since they were not used to drinking vodka. Jasmine spied a cute African guy and overheard some girls call him Mike. He was one of the hottest dancers on the floor, and many girls danced close to Mike to get his attention. And so Jasmine decided she would make Mike her conquest for the night. After all, her group said they would try to date foreign students. They were supposed to be better than the locals, whatever that meant. Jasmine pranced around in front of Mike and piqued his interest. He was tall, dark, and muscular. His broad face and big eyes were crowned by a huge smile of perfect white teeth. "And who are you?" he asked, noticing Jasmine for the first time. I haven't seen you on campus before. Well, I'm a first-year student, single and ready to mingle. By then, Carla had paired up with Nico from Greece. His naturally tan skin, longish dark hair, and huge biceps were the main attraction. Ariam had been spellbound over Roger from Lebanon because he was French-speaking. Lara was gushing when she met Yoshi from Japan. He was a hip Japanese young man with the best jeans and haircut, and he was a whole head taller than her. Winsome had been flirting with Aidan, an Irish second-year student. He was tall and skinny with short cropped black hair and the deepest blue eyes. Aidan charmed all the girls with his strong Dublin accent, and he used it to his full advantage. After a few hours of prancing, Jasmine invited Mike to check out the posters in her room. He knew what her invitation meant and followed sheepishly behind, waving farewell to his buddies who were watching on the sidelines. "Have fun," they said, waving to him as he left. Jasmine and Mike kissed passionately as she fumbled to unlock the door to her bedroom. His big arms enfolded her and his lips swallowed hers. She could barely breathe, and her body heaved against his. "Just a minute, let me open the door," she urged as he squeezed her tightly. "Okay," he said, out of breath. Jasmine managed to open the door, and luckily her roommate was out for the night. To find out what happens next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for the Rain. What do you think Jasmine did? Did she do anything or not? Gotta get a copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for the Rain, to find out. So we have paperbacks available at Amazon. It's Amazon Kindle. And if you have a Kindle reader, you can read for free from the Kindle Owners Library. So if you have a Kindle, get it out, fire it up, and you can borrow the book from the Kindle Owners Lending Library. Right? Bring out your glasses, take a little sip to celebrate with me. I'm drinking Perrier bubbly water. Chat box, who you think was the first of the girls to get married and get her MRS? Let me see what you all think in the chat box, because we can't read all the chapters, so I'm going to skip ahead to a wedding. Who was the first to get married? Let's write it down. Who was first to get her MRS? Oh, thank you, Geoffrey. Good to see you. So everyone, put in the chat box who you think was the first girl in the group to get married and get her MRS and have a campus wedding. Any guesses? Put your thoughts in the chat box. Tell me. Who you think? So we had Winsome, who is from Barbados, Ariam, who is Korean, Carla, who is Slavic, Lara, of Irish descent. Oh, hi Debbie, good to see you. Thanks for joining. We have Jasmine, the wild Turkish one. So who in the group was the first to get married? Of the 5 girls, can anybody guess? Anybody who heard the names of the girls from the beginning? Make a guess. Is Sachi still here? Jill? Can anybody guess who was the first to get married? I'm going to read about the campus wedding now. Anybody can guess? Okay, well, I will just tell you. The Trini, there was no Trini. Oh, Diane. Okay, so I'll tell you the names. We had Lara, who was of Irish descent. We had Winsome, who is from Barbados. We had Jasmine of Turkish descent. We had Carla, Slavic girl, and Ariam, who was of Korean descent. So Debbie says Jasmine. Well, Jasmine likes to play around. Oh, too many to remember. Okay, so I will just tell you who I picked. I picked Winsome, the girl from Barbados, to get married first. So I'll read a few snippets from the chapter. Of course, we can't read everything tonight because you're going to get your book, but I'll read you a few snippets. The situation with Winsome. So it was a graduation and then a wedding. Some people said Ariam. Well, it didn't turn out to be Ariam in my book. So here's Winsome. Mommy, I've already bought my dress. It's so pretty. Winsome screamed into the telephone one day when she called home. Wedding dress? You mean you're still going through with this insane wedding? Asked her mother, hoping Winsome would have somehow changed her mind. You know I am, said Winsome, laughing. She had worn down her parents over the weeks with continuous calls of reassurance, and they reluctantly accepted her decision. Mommy, can you please send money for the graduation gown, rental, and photos? I really want to get the souvenir school ring too. They have so many pretty designs. Young lady, money doesn't grow on trees, you know, her mother said with a smirk in her voice. Winsome knew that she was the only child and she could probably get her parents to support her request considering her grades were good and she showed she was focused on a bright future. I got accepted into the MBA program. I'm so excited. So do you need money for the wedding reception too? My daughter is not going to have any poor shabby wedding, you know. I'm sending extra money so you can buy beautiful flowers and have a fancy cake and tasty food, said her mother. You don't need to fuss about the wedding, Mommy. It's going to be simple, said Winsome. Not at all, said her mother. I wouldn't want your in-laws to think you're from some poor, wretched family. Make sure you have a nice spread at that event. I'm paying for it. And also your Aunt Susie is coming for the graduation and the wedding. You know how she's fussy. And she loves nice decorations. Hire a good florist to fix your bouquet and put lots of flowers on the outdoor furniture since you're going to have an outdoor wedding. The orders were coming fast and furious, and the simple wedding plan was getting a little more complicated than Winsome had planned. However, if her parents wanted to send money for the wedding reception, she wouldn't refuse it. At least they had finally come to terms with her marriage. So that was just the beginning. At first, Winsome's parents did not accept the idea of getting married to somebody they didn't know. Winsome's mother, father, and Auntie Susie had flown in from Barbados to Greenwood via the international airport in Hamilton the day before. The long journey involved several connecting flights. They then rented a car to drive to Walter Mac. Winsome's family checked into one of the university hotels the night before the graduation. She met her parents at the hotel and they all hugged her and looked her over from head to toe. The family went out to dinner that night at the best restaurant she could recommend in the town. Choices were slim. It was a very small town. Why you look so skinny? You haven't eaten well, Winsome, her mother scolded. Look at my daughter. She's all grown up. You look a bit skinny, it's true, said Auntie Susie. She's just more mature. Leave her alone. She looks pretty. That's my little girl, said her father. Mommy, I'm just the right size. I really don't need to be bigger than this, said Winsome. If I had gained weight, you would tell me I look fat, right? They all laughed. People in her family were known to talk about weight and size all the time. They planned to visit neighboring cities and national parks during the week after the graduation and the wedding. And the parents hoped Winsome and Terence would join them. Terence's family also arrived the night before the graduation, and they were staying at a small hotel near Walter Mack. His mother, father, brother, and sister, as well as his grandparents, were in town for the graduation and the wedding. They couldn't wait to meet Winsome after Terence spent weeks convincing his parents to accept someone from another culture. He was a bit nervous about the first meeting of the families, which was to take place at lunchtime before the graduation. Winsome and Terence planned a family luncheon before the graduation ceremony at the local Italian restaurant, so their families would have the opportunity to become acquainted before the small wedding. They felt if there was going to be any drama, they would rather have it play out before the wedding than during the wedding. At the Italian restaurant, I'll tell you what happened. So as Winsome entered with her family, Terence and his family were already seated and waiting at a large table near the window. Both families smiled nervously at each other, waving and saying hello, 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 hello. Hello everyone, said Terence. Let me introduce you to my fiancé, Winsome. Winsome went around the table shaking hands with his family. Terence's parents gave her a kiss on her cheek, and his mother looked her over from head to toe and seemed to approve. Lovely girl, she said as she sat back down. Terence gave her an eye in case she said something out of turn. He must have had a long chat with the family, so they'd be on their best behavior. Winsome also warned her mother and aunt to hold their tongues and not say anything if it wasn't something good. So nice to finally meet you, Terence, and to meet your family, said Winston's mother. So what do you do? She already knew that Terence was managing the IT department, but wanted to ask again, for lack of something to say. So do you plan to stay there for a long time? Winsome stared at her mother, in case her questions became too intrusive. So you know how moms are. It was then Terence's mother asked her series of questions about Winsome's plan to do graduate students and who was paying for that. Well, you know, that little wedding tomorrow wouldn't be the only wedding, blurted out Winsome's mother as she piled some dessert cake on her plate. Terence's parents listened earnestly at the point. We will have a fancy wedding in a year or two in Barbados, when we can celebrate with all our family and friends. You know, several of our friends own beachfront property and large hotels, so we will have our pick as to where we'll have the reception. You're all invited, of course. You'll be well taken care of. Winsome wasn't consulted prior to this big announcement, so she was just as surprised as everyone to hear about it. So as not to be left out, Terence's mother announced that they would also stage a very large celebration in the Philippines at a gorgeous beachfront hotel owned by their family, and everyone was invited. So, to find out what happens next and all the drama at the wedding, please get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. What do you think about the moms and their behavior and trying to outdo each other? Isn't it typical of mothers? Or some mothers anyway. Put your comments in the chat box. Yes. Ooh la la, Bajan and Bougie. Yes. Yes, KWI Bonafide, Bajan and Bougie. And it's quite a story. You should read about the wedding. Drama and more drama. But that's expected, right? When you have clash of two cultures. So everybody take a sip of water, a sip of something, get a snack, and come on back. All right, so now that was graduation and then the wedding. So we had 5 girls, 1 got married, and we had 4 more to go. And so the girls got jobs in the big city nearby. I call that big city Greenwood. Does anybody know the significance of Greenwood? KWI Bonafide, you might know. I kind of set this story in a particular state in the United States, and Greenwood has a significant story behind it. Anybody? Anybody has heard of Greenwood? Well, look it up, you will see it. So now I'm going to write about office adventures. Mostly about Jasmine and her adventures, because she's the main protagonist, although the others also get into trouble along the way. So Jasmine got work in a nice big office, and she carried on the same way she did in school. Jasmine saw a very gorgeous young man walk through the office. She overheard people call him Jim, and he worked with the IT group in another large office next to her room. Eventually, Jasmine decided to confide in her neighbor opposite to find out a little bit about Jim as he walked through their office on an assignment. "Does Jim work out?" she asked Janice. "Well, it sure looks like he does, but don't try anything with him, you know. I heard he may have a partner or something, but I'm not sure." This was no deterrent for Jasmine. In fact, she was even more determined to find out if he was dating anyone seriously, so she could perhaps fill the empty gap. The company picnic was coming up that Saturday, and it was the right time to find out. Most people would come with their significant partner, and since she was alone, she was going alone, and she planned to observe the crowd closely while socializing. When she met with her friends at the pub that Friday, the girls told her that she should not pursue an office relationship. "Jasmine, haven't you heard the saying that you should never mix business and pleasure?" asked Ariel. "It's a recipe for disaster. Leave him alone." "That's true," chimed Carla. "If it doesn't work out, you'll have to look at him every day in the office." "Well, he's actually in the room next door, so I wouldn't have to see him that much," confirmed Jasmine. "Well, I still don't think it's a good idea. My office is full of creative, cool guys. After all, I'm in advertising," said Ariel. "Some of them are really nice, but you won't catch me sleeping around with any of them. They gossip too much anyway. You should hear some of the stuff they say at lunchtime about all the girls they had seen, and too much information." "Oh, really?" said Jasmine, a bit concerned. "Well, if I do strike up a relationship with Jim, we'll have to work on being discreet and not letting folks in the office know anything." Jasmine continued. She found Jim as soon as she went into the park for the company summer picnic and joined his team for the tug-of-war. It was a battle of the wits and fittest. Eventually, Jasmine's team managed to pull the other side across the midline drawn on the lawn. They won with flying colors. Jasmine laughed and hugged Jim instinctively, and he just smiled and hugged back. After a few games, Jim asked if she wanted to go and get some barbecue and soda. And volunteers were there serving all the participants. They were both hungry and thirsty from the day's activities and were just happy to relax and chat about Jasmine's first few weeks with the company. As Jasmine was about to leave for home, Jim asked if he could call her sometime. She wanted to scream to the high heavens at that point. Could it be so easy? She remained calm and said, of course, and she gave her number. One day at the office, out of nowhere, Jim pulled Jasmine to the side of the refrigerator in the IT kitchen and stole a kiss. Jim, we shouldn't be doing this here. Someone will see us, protested Jasmine. Before she could say another word, he planted a kiss squarely on her lips, and she couldn't resist. She ran her fingers through his mass of curly hair as he hugged and kissed her greedily. He then pressed her against the wall, and they continued kissing, completely unaware that one of the vice presidents had passed and observed them through the glass window of the kitchen. He stopped and stared for a few seconds, and his jaw dropped. Just then, Jasmine got a glimpse of him out of the corner of her eye, and she pushed Jim away. Mr. Khan is watching! Mr. Khan is watching! She was out of breath. To find out what happens next, you have to get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. So what do you think happened with Jim and Jasmine in the office? Anybody? Oh, I see I have some Greenwood, Indiana news. It's in Oklahoma, actually. So, Jim and Jazzy up to no good, being spotted by a VP who was passing. Can you imagine the scandal in the office? Office drama. Office drama is always quite a bit of fun, actually. You can't leave that out of any book. Now, I'm going to read about some of the antics. So the book started in the 1990s. There was no internet, but then continued in the 2000s. So internet came and online dating started. So I'll tell you about some adventures. Because our girls remained single for a long time, just dating this one and that in this story. Lara and Jasmine were bursting with stories of strange encounters when they met people online. From one man who forgot his wallet to another who had multiple interests in men and women. They couldn't believe what had happened in such a short time of online dating. That's why I told you girls to be careful who you bring to your place, said Carla in a motherly tone. Lots of unconventional people roam the city. Jasmine had just completed an experiment the day before by joining a male chat room online, pretending to be a man. You did what? Asked her friends in chorus. I signed into a male chat room. Nobody could see me. Men were writing messages about their dating strategies. Well, that's not honest, Jasmine, said Ariel. Well, the men in this chat room were not honest either. Would you like to hear what I found out? So she was able to get everyone's attention immediately, and they huddled closely to hear more. One man discussed his strategy of meeting 4 women in the same day and not having to spend a cent on any of them. She called him the serial dater. He would invite the women to the same coffee shop and space out the visits in 2.5-hour segments. He estimated 2 hours for each date and half an hour to relax and refresh in between. What a strategy. He can meet someone at 9, at 11:30, at 2, and then at 4:30 on a Saturday. He could buy himself a coffee and a snack before the women arrived, because they always went to the counter to get their own, and then they joined him. They would chat for a while, and then he would say, "Oh, I have to leave shortly." The women went on their way, and he prepared for the next date, and the next, and the next, sometimes going to the bathroom to freshen up before the next person arrived. Continued Jasmine. Now that's really clever. Yes, but who wants to be a part of his assembly line of dates? Everyone was confused. Now I'm going to be suspicious anytime a man asks me to meet at a cafe for a date, said Lara. Another strategy Jasmine found out was the technique of dating several women at one time and never having any of them find out about the others. She said she felt so annoyed with this conversation, but she couldn't reveal herself because she wanted to learn more about the strategies. So she remained incognito. This man discussed how he had a serious girlfriend who lived and worked in Greenwood. However, he met a beautiful woman who lived and worked in a western suburb of Mounston, and she would never come into Greenwood because she had everything she needed right there in her town. And he couldn't help but love another woman who lived in a suburb east of Greenwood called Tremor. She was beautiful and needed lots of attention. So, even though the man lived and worked downtown Greenwood, he dedicated his Saturdays and Sundays to his Tremor love. On weekends, her ex-husband kept the children. She was too busy with work and taking care of children during the week. The first part of the week, the serial dater would visit his Mounstown girlfriend because she was always busy with family on weekends. The middle to the end of the week was spent in quality time on evenings with his downtown best girlfriend. He estimated that everybody was happy and they never needed to hear about each other because they would never meet. Not only was it possible, but when Jasmine went incognito, she learned that 1 or 2 of the other men also practiced this to varying degrees. Ladies, you have to be vigilant. Don't end up as part 1 or part 2 or part 3 in a man's stage show. So listeners, what do you think about that strategy? And the book is based on true stories, I'll have you know. Okay? So most of what I talk about, I've heard from people. I've seen it myself. I don't know, I wouldn't tell you if it was me or a friend or what, but most of the book is based on true stories. So what do you think about the assembly line dating scene? Oh, Debbie says typical womanizing. Yes, unfortunately, we have to deal with that. Strategy is important. He was a cheapskate. Yes. We meet all kinds along the way. What can we do? We have to be vigilant in playing the dating game, because for many it is a game. So, but if you're aware of the strategies, that helps. It just helps to be aware. Take a sip. Jill says, not for me, thanks. I know. There's too much to keep up with them and their antics. Now I'm going to read about one fella that Jasmine met. She met a fella called Rick. And she was so infatuated with Rick, they met him at a really fancy club. Rick told her, let's see. They met at a club. She had heard quite a few movie personalities would hang around that particular club. And Rick said, I'm in between projects at the moment, but I usually work on some really high-profile movies and documentaries. In fact, right now I've been asked to consider an important movie coming up with a really big star. Wow, that sounds amazing, said Jasmine. Who is it? If I told you, I'd have to kill you, said Rick, laughing. It's a highly confidential situation, you know. Jasmine was quite impressed to meet a man who worked with high-profile stars. She couldn't wait to tell Carla, Ariam, and Lara. What a catch! When they were in the ladies' room, Jasmine blurted out Rick's story. But did he tell you who he was working with? Asked Lara. Of course not. This type of stuff is highly confidential, said Jasmine with authority. Isn't he so cute? Can't wait to test the goods. Jasmine, just get to know the man a little bit before you hop into bed with him, please, said Ariam. I know. Oh, but he's so irresistible. Did you see the body? They all saw his body and they agreed he was a hottie. They had to keep an eye on Jasmine to be sure she left the club with them and not with Rick. That could wait for another day when she met him on neutral territory. Jasmine and Rick exchanged phone numbers before she left with friends. He held Jasmine's hand romantically and kissed her hand, looking into her eyes. I'm gonna call you every day, Chickie, he said. She chuckled at her new name and looked forward breathlessly to his calls. Now, ladies in the chat, tell me if you met a guy who said he was in between jobs and everything was confidential, would you believe him? Would you? Tell me in the chat room section here. Would you believe him? Let me know what you think of this Rick character. So Rick called Jasmine in the morning before she left for work. Then he called to see how she was doing during the lunch break. Then he called at night when she returned home from work. Jasmine fell head over heels with him. She couldn't remember a man paying that much attention to her in a long time. Jasmine had several major projects to complete that week, and so even though it was tempting to go out with Rick, she had to decline his many offers to meet for a drink, meet for coffee, go for a walk, all other suggestions until the end of the week. On Saturday, however, she was completely free, and he seized the moment along with good weather to suggest they go for a long walk and a picnic at the waterfront. That Saturday night, Jasmine did all her chores, and then Sunday she was completely free for Rick. They took a drive out to the countryside in his convertible on Sunday afternoon and enjoyed stopping at a quaint tea house for cake and coffee. Without thinking, Jasmine invited Rick to her condominium for a nightcap. By that time, Jasmine owned a one-bedroom condominium in an older building in the city. The lovely living room was open onto an outdoor porch through glass sliding doors. Beautiful place. As Rick walked in, he praised her for her taste in decorating, and he loved the large windows and the view of the city. Your place is lovely. You did a great job decorating it. He stayed for the night. And the next day, Rick slept over at Jasmine's condominium many times in the following month. And one day he mentioned on the phone that he needed to have a serious discussion. Jasmine wondered what it could be. What was so important? Why couldn't he say it over the phone? Was he going to break up with her? She would be devastated. That evening after work, Jasmine felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for Rick to arrive with his news. Jasmine fixed Rick a special dinner that night to entice him to stay over. After dinner, as they sat hugging on the sofa watching a movie, Rick mentioned that his roommate had skipped out and he was stuck paying an enormous rent at his apartment. He wondered if Jasmine could let him move in. He was in between projects and finances were short at the time. So to find out what happened next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody. What she did for that ring. Do you think Jasmine let Rick move in? What do you think? Tell me in the chat box. Do you think he moved in? Would you let Rick in if he was in between jobs and his roommate skipped out on him? What do you think Jasmine did? Now, for everyone who joined us today, you can get an e-version of Mrs. Somebody if you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com books. I put the link in the chat box. So subscribe to my website and you can get a free ebook. Just do me a favor when you read the book, put some comments on Amazon, what you thought about the book, right? Let's see, KWI said no, loser Rick, bye. Well, you should see what Jasmine did. It's quite the story and it goes for a while. What is another listener think? Do you think Jasmine let Rick move into her place? Remember, he dealt with high-profile movie stars. He was just in between jobs, in between projects, he said. Anybody else? What do you think? Put your comments in the chat box. Now I'm going to do one more reading for you. After lots of planning and dating and matchmaking and all sorts of procedures, because the girls got Botox and all, after like a decade or two, Botox became popular and the Scarsdale diet. And I talk about all the fads during the 2000s, all the various fads of dieting and adjusting the body to stay young. They were young, but the years kept piling on. So as they're approaching the late 30s, things were getting a little desperate, or they felt desperate. So I'll tell you what Jasmine did. And this is going to be the last reading for today. But a funny or sad reading, the way you might, I'm not sure how you would look at it. But the chapter is called Outrageous Planning. I've bought my wedding dress, Jasmine announced to Ariam and Lara when they met the following week. Jasmine was 39 and going to be 40 soon. Jasmine had invited her friends over for a special meeting. What do you mean by that? You haven't even found a good guy yet, laughed Lara. Well, I was looking at dresses online and I saw the one I want to wear on my wedding day, said Jasmine. The price was right too. So I thought, why bother waiting? I may not see anything great again, and I plan to get married soon, I told you. Are you insane? Who does that? So what will you do with the dress now? Asked Ariam, completely amused. First things first, I have to go on a diet and exercise, said Jasmine. I bought it one size smaller, so I'm going to have to try to fit into it. Her friends sincerely believed Jasmine was losing her mind. A wedding dress that was too small wasn't normal behavior. Just buying a wedding dress without finding the husband was not normal behavior. Jasmine had read somewhere in a magazine about manifesting what you wanted by creating conditions for things to come into your life. A person had to act and believe what they wanted was already part of his life, and it would happen. So Jasmine decided to hang the dress on one side of her bedroom, and she showed her friends. They loved the beautiful violet color and the jeweled area gathered at the shoulders. This dress was kept neatly in a plastic covering, and Jasmine planned to look at it every day to manifest a husband into her life. Ariam and Lara felt Jasmine was taking the manifesting too far, but maybe she would eventually get her wish. So, to find out what happened next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. That was the last reading from the book. Do you think Jasmine was able to find her perfect guy, her Mr. Right? Do you think she became Mrs. Somebody as she hoped? Tell me what you think in the chat box. And again, for taking part in our book reading today, I'm offering everyone a free copy, a free ebook, when you subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com/books. So you just go on to the link and subscribe to my website, put in your email, and I'll send you a copy of the ebook. So tell me what you think, Jasmine. Did you find her ideal husband, her ideal mate? Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. The book has many stories. Some would consider it pure madness, but as I said, the book is based on true stories. So just imagine that when you're reading it, lots of these things actually happen to people I know. Some might have been me too, but I'm not telling. Anybody has any questions for me? Put it in the chat box. Tell me what you think happened with Jasmine in the end. You can get a paperback from Amazon.com, ebooks on Amazon Kindle, and if you have a Kindle reader, you can borrow the book from the Kindle Owners Lending Library for free, right? Don't think it was in the stars from Miss Girl Jazzy. Well, you never know with Jasmine and the manifesting. Maybe it worked out, just maybe. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the book readings. Now I only gave you a few snippets of the book because there are many crazy stories, true stories, but with fictitious characters. So you need to read that book and find out some more. Any questions? Any comments? Thank you so much for joining me today. And that's it. Thanks so much. It was very exciting reading from my first romance novel. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye, everybody, and take care.